Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and Smart Play Wave 2 is here. After a very disastrous launch in March of this year with LEGO Star Wars Smart Play, we have finally received LEGO's newest Smart Play offerings, and this time it's all about Pokemon. While Pokemon launched earlier this year, it was more focused on large-scale buildable models for adult collectors. Incredibly expensive sets, Pikachu, Charizard, and so many more, and there was really nothing for kids. If you were a kid who were a fan of Pokemon, unless you had an extra $700 or $800 laying around, you were kind of out of luck. And well, thankfully, that's what this wave is for. Unfortunately, it is all about Smart Play, and it is no secret that I have not been the biggest fan of Smart Play, and I think that's putting it kindly. I put out a video when Smart Play launched for LEGO Star Wars in March, and suffice to say, I was not happy. I felt like there were so many flaws to the system, it was a fundamentally flawed way of play, and it caused these sets to be incredibly expensive. Not to mention that to this day, Smart Play is still only available in 6 different territories. Not even Japan, may I add, where Pokemon originates from. Rumors say this will change next year, with this year's wave of Star Wars Smart Play sets being released in more regions starting next year, but as of right now, these are very limited. I say all that to say, though, that while I was incredibly harsh on Star Wars Smart Play, I put out a massive video sharing my honest opinions, and they were very honest and upfront, and I was not positive on the way that they worked. I have to say that Pokemon Smart Play is actually pretty good, and I cannot believe I'm saying this. Now, when I first saw images of Pokemon Smart Play, I was very concerned. I really did not think that they were going to be all too fantastic. I thought that the aesthetic of the creatures was very odd, and I was very worried about the prices of the sets. And then more and more sets were released, and then finally the entire wave came out on August 1st. I went to my local LEGO store, picked them all up at once. These were the first things I built. I built one after the other, and I started to realize that these are actually pretty good toys on their own. In fact, out of all of the different Smart Play Pokemon sets, only 2 of them actually include the aforementioned Smart Bricks. The rest of them are basically just standalone, and you can choose to use the Smart Bricks to accentuate your play, but as we're gonna find out throughout the course of this video, you don't really need Smart Bricks in order to enjoy these sets. They're very collectible on their own, they're a lot of fun, and there are a lot of physical play opportunities. And I think that this is a wave that, despite the fact that this was probably developed at around the same time as Star Wars Smart Play, and obviously LEGO was not able to iterate on feedback from the March wave because this was a summer release, these were already locked and confirmed way before that. Somehow, it really feels that this fixes almost every major problem I had with Smart Play Star Wars. Now, I will say that I do think that this is the kind of concept that only really works for particular themes. We are getting rumors of Smart Play Ninjago next year, and I'm very worried. I'm not excited for that. I'm very concerned it's going to detract from Dragon's Fury and the conclusion to the 5-season arc that Dragon's Rising has been building up to by having a ton of Smart Play sets. I'm quite concerned. I feel like Ninjago is not really the theme that needs it. But Pokemon actually makes a lot of sense. Now, LEGO has struggled to figure out how to do an anime-inspired theme for years. This is really our first ever officially anime LEGO theme, and we've gotten anime-inspired LEGO in the past with their own original lines like Exoforce, and we've gotten One Piece, but that was based off of the Netflix live action. These are actually based off of Pokemon in general. Now, obviously, Pokemon isn't just anime. There are video games, there's trading cards, there's a whole other world to Pokemon, but it's really interesting how Pokemon as a subject is something LEGO hasn't really ever touched until this year. A lot of that were due to licensing issues, but I feel like a bigger part of it is that Pokemon and LEGO is a concept that sounds like it makes a lot of obvious sense, but if you actually think about the execution, it's kind of difficult to figure out how to best pull it off. You see, the immediate thought that I and many other people had were that, well, this would be amazing if it was minifigure scale, if we had LEGO minifigs and little molded Pokemon, and they're all to scale with the minifigures. The problem with that is that so many of the iconic Pokemon, you've got all of your small to mid-sized Pokemon up on this front row here, including Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and so much more. those are all a lot smaller than a minifigure, so they would require a very highly specialized new mold just to have the Pokemon. And then that begs the question, well, if it's all about the Pokemon to buy the sets, what will the sets even look like if they were minifigure scale? Now, we do have a couple of minifigure scale sets, but these are more for the adult 18 plus diorama building display, right? We have our first Pokemon minifigure here, Zinnia, alongside a relatively minifigure scale Rayquaza here, which actually looks really cool. I'm definitely a big fan of how they pulled off this set. And we have a few more, like we have the gigantic Pokeball that's coming a little bit later on, and that also has Trainer Red as well as some other characters in it, but kind of off to the side, like the Pokeball is its own thing. And I feel like that's really emblematic of the challenges that you would face when making a LEGO Pokemon minifigure scale theme. If the focus is all on the Pokemon and you literally just pull Pikachu out of a bag and you're done, what does the rest of the build look like? I'm sure they could do some sort of terrain. I mean, we got a Pikachu house this time. They could do some arenas, some iconic buildings, but I feel like those would just simply not be as exciting as sets compared to actually being able to build the Pokemon. So if you set aside minifigure scale Pokemon as something that doesn't make the most sense, the next immediate thing is for LEGO to decide on a scale that works to actually brick build Pokemon. That way you can have small sets, big sets, but even if you take your smallest Pokemon or a relatively small Pokemon like Pikachu, there is still a bit of a building experience there. It is part of the play to put them together, which I think is definitely something core to collecting Pokemon. You want to feel with LEGO that sense of achievement that you've collected him, that you've put him together. And so, I've actually kind of come around to this scale of building Pokemon, and we haven't even talked about the Smart Brick yet. I mean, this is setting the Smart Brick completely aside. I feel like the scale they settled on here, where all the Pokemon are relatively in scale with each other. I think Charizard is like a little small compared to Pikachu's size, and Gengar feels really big to me, but I don't have a good handle on like how exactly Gengar is supposed to be scaled compared to others. But for the most part, they feel like generally pretty well scaled with each other, and I actually really like the scale. Now, the other thing is that this isn't just scaling, there's also a very specific aesthetic introduced for Smart Play Pokemon. Instead of having these be brick-built recreations of Pokemon utilizing all their realistic curvature and shapes, instead they have a bit of a different vibe to them, where every single Pokemon has a very squared and kind of blocky aesthetic. And honestly, at first glance, I was not the biggest fan of this. It felt very corporate to me to say, okay, we are going to depict Pokemon in LEGO form. What do people know LEGO is about? Well, LEGO is about building blocks, right? There are bricks. There are LEGO bricks. Bricks are square. Bricks are rectangles. Let's just make every Pokemon a rectangle and simplify the geometry there. And I felt like that was a very corporate decision that like some LEGO exec in a boardroom said, well, we need to make these recognizably LEGO and people only recognize it if it's square. And we actually know this is something that LEGO does. LEGO released a book about the making of LEGO Star Wars, and they talked about the helmet set, which there's one on my shelf, but you can barely see it. But one of the things they talked about was that for something like a Stormtrooper helmet, they initially had a version of the build that was super smoothed off, and it was very rounded, and it looked like kind of to scale with an actual Stormtrooper helmet. But all the test audiences said it doesn't look like LEGO. If I'm getting a LEGO set, I want to see that it looks like LEGO. So they had to literally make it more blocky and expose more studs just to like make the consumer's brain go, oh, that's LEGO, especially if it's a consumer who isn't the biggest fan of LEGO. And that felt a little counterintuitive to me. I feel like LEGO has evolved so much as a system over the years where you don't need to have everything be a rectangle. Like you can have very complex shapes built out of LEGO and have it look really good. And I was a little disappointed to see Smart Play Pokemon initially adopt the same style that they did for something like Super Mario with the electronic Nintendo like Mario where he's just a rectangle, and I'm very glad they're fixing that and doing minifigures next year. After 7 years of the theme being out, they finally realized that minifigure-based Mario play actually makes a lot of sense. But honestly, after collecting all the Pokemon and putting them together, I've really come around to appreciating the visual style of the Pokemon. For one, as a LEGO fan who I don't really have a ton of time to build mocks nowadays, and I don't really have a sorted build system, which I really wish I would at some point in the future if I ever have the time to do it, but I was at LEGO Masters and I was able to do a lot of custom builds there. I feel like LEGO Pokemon is genuinely one of the biggest innovations or expansions to the LEGO system in play building system in a very long time. There are 19, I believe off the top of my head, 19 new molds introduced in the LEGO Smart Play Pokemon lineup, and almost every single one is a piece that I genuinely feel is going to be incredibly useful for all sorts of LEGO builds going forwards. A really great website called New Elementary, which I would highly recommend you check out. They do these amazing articles that deep dive on LEGO pieces, put out an in-depth article on every single one of these new elements, how they interface with other geometries already existing in the LEGO system, and I highly recommend you go check that out if you do want to learn more about those pieces, because I was very impressed. It essentially is defining a brand new way to build with curved LEGO elements. There are 1x3s, 1x4s, 1x2s, and they're all just an expansion on this curvature system that LEGO has been building out ever since they shortened the slope piece a few years back. I think that was last year. They made the kind of bent down slope element. It's a slope with a single stud sticking off the side. Instead of being 2 modules tall, it's now 1 module tall, and that just expanded the entire slope system. Many viewers probably have no idea what on earth I'm even talking about right now, but anyway, if you know, you know. LEGO has been improving their slope system for quite some time, and their curvature pieces, and this is a major expansion. There are so many new pieces that when putting them together, I said, oh my goodness, this is something that's going to be incredibly useful for any LEGO build that needs a smooth, curved surface. There's almost every single type of variation you would want. They're rounded off at different angles. You can have a 90-degree slope. You can have a 90-degree rounded underside slope, overside slope, a tiled off surface, a studded surface that's rounded. There's so much here, and I was really, really happy with all the pieces. And it's really interesting because when you think of 19 new molds being introduced for a Pokemon wave, I think immediately your mind would go, oh, they're super specialized, they're only for Pokemon, and LEGO just spent a ton of money on molds they're never going to use again. And it's almost the exact opposite here, where I feel like there are barely any specialized pieces in these whatsoever. Like maybe one of the pieces for the Pokeballs is a little more specialized, but even that I can see people using in interesting ways. Out of all the 19 molds, everything else is genuinely a very cool expansion to the LEGO building system. So that's something I actually really appreciate. And again, we haven't even talked about Smart Play yet. This is just on how they play. And we're going to get into it when I talk about each individual set throughout this review, going from the smallest to largest. But the other thing that I really want to say that I love about the way that these work is that there are so many affordable entry points. There are $20 sets here that I genuinely feel are some of the best value for money that you can get for $20 in a LEGO set today. I cannot believe I'm saying that about Smart Play sets, about Pokemon licensed sets, about Smart Play Pokemon sets, but some of these $20 builds are genuinely really good value, with fun play features that do not need the Smart Brick to play with them. In fact, I would say for a good half of the sets, there are side builds that have nothing to do with the Smart Brick, that you literally just use your own imagination to come up with play scenarios. You know, imagination and creativity, kind of what LEGO is all about. So again, that is something I really appreciate about this wave. Unlike LEGO Star Wars, and I'm trying not to do direct comparisons yet, I want to do a whole separate section of this video talking about that, but kind of transitioning over to that, I feel like the biggest flaw of LEGO Star Wars Smart Play is that the vehicles look really bad. There are massive gaps in them where the Smart Brick is supposed to go. There are big, red little platforms to put the Smart Brick on. They're very, squished. The proportions are all wrong. The cockpits are open. The minifigures look really ugly with printing on the side of them to not throw them away, and the Smart Play printing on the back, and it just doesn't look good. I don't think you can buy any one of the Smart Play Star Wars sets, even the Millennium Falcon, which does not include a Smart Brick, and genuinely enjoy it as a LEGO toy by itself without some pretty in-depth modification, or at the very least without half the play features being literally useless without the Smart Brick. There are knobs and gears and levers all around the Millennium Falcon, but all they do is turn things on the inside where you're supposed to put a Smart Brick. So unless you have a Smart Brick in there, there's literally nothing that you can do with them. They don't visually do anything. Let's contrast that with LEGO Pokemon. Even the most simple functions that you would feel are genuinely built for Smart Brick, like training platforms. There are bouncy pieces, so if you don't want to play with it with the Smart Brick, you can still imagine that they are training and using them as dummies or hitboxes. There are platforms to topple Pokemon over. Right here, we've toppled over Gengar, and that's something you can play with, and you don't need the Smart Brick to do that. That was just fun to do to make him topple over. Same with Mewtwo, right? There's a whole feature that allows Mewtwo's entire cage to collapse here, and that has nothing to do with the smart brick. Like, putting the smart brick on there does not change anything. It feels like a real Lego set, you know, like a Lego set that doesn't need a piece of technology for you to enjoy. And that's something I really love and appreciate, and I feel was sorely missing from the Lego Star Wars Smart Play sets, which you barely could enjoy without the smart brick. The other thing is that the prices of Smart Bricks' first wave were very egregious. There was a Luke's Landspeeder for, I want to say $40. It could have been even more. It might have been like 45, some ridiculous amount of money off the top of my head. And it was like the smallest Luke's Landspeeder ever with a big open platform to put the smart brick. And then there was a refueling station with like bright blue and bright green. And it didn't actually do anything with the smart brick. It just made different noises. And that was it. Like, and then you had to spend $40 for it, which is insane. And there's nothing that you can do with that set, really, unless you have the smart brick. Contrasted with like a $20 set that includes 2 Pokemon, a genuinely fun build. I go back to the Geodude one, which we're going to talk about, but like a genuinely fun build that is like not on camera right now, but it's a really fun build that you can use to like attack your opponents and launch rocks at your opponents. And you don't need the smart brick to play with that. Like, there are projectiles you can launch without the smart brick, and that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. And I genuinely had a lot of fun playing with it outside of the smart brick integration, which didn't really even add much. It was a nice bonus when I had the smart brick on, and I could hear noises and sounds as I used it, but I didn't need it. And that was something that felt really special to me, that these genuinely feel like Lego toys first, and then electronic add-ons second. And I was on a podcast, on our weekly podcast with Bricks by Mind recently, and he brought up a really good point I want to mention in this video. Imagine a world where Smart Brick launched similarly to if you were around in 2018 when LEGO launched LEGO Boost, which was kind of a replacement to LEGO Mindstorms. And there was a Ninjago set, Stormbringer, that you could play with on your own, or you could choose to upgrade with LEGO Boost and make it motorized. Imagine if they had launched that like the smart brick, where instead of just throwing the smart brick in everyone's faces, making it the quote-unquote biggest innovation since the launch of the minifigure, just have it as an add-on and say, look, here are the new Pokemon sets. These are going to be a lot of fun for you to play with. You can have this gimmick of an electronic brick. If you want to, you can add it on and they can actually duel and make noises, but the whole purpose is to just play with them. And this was the launch of the smart brick. I feel like people would actually really like this thing. I think that people would genuinely be coming around on the smart brick, but I totally feel that LEGO fumbled the marketing by making it all about the smart brick. Like the average consumer, like even me, before buying these sets, I went into these thinking I was not going to like them because they were smart brick sets, and I feel like a lot of consumers probably feel that way as well. So I definitely feel that LEGO kind of shot themselves in the foot, because a lot of these are genuinely fun sets with decent values, at least for the ones that don't have the smart brick, and we're going to get into my thoughts on value and price, and not everything is a great deal. Some I do feel are a bit more overpriced, but by and large, a lot of the small sets are good deals, and you don't need the smart brick to enjoy it. Now, there is one major thing I do want to talk about here, and that is smart play. So I'm going to enact a series of duels and show a demonstration of smart bricks throughout this video. But here was the biggest concern. So when we actually do take the smart brick in, right, this whole time I've been talking about what smart play Pokemon is like without the brick. But let's say we put the brick in. What is smart play Pokemon like? And the answer is a heck of a lot more fun than smart play Star Wars. Here is the biggest problem that I had with Smart Play Star Wars. Number one is that there was no real combat. There was no challenge to the combat. You could have a smart brick in an X-Wing and a smart brick in a TIE Fighter, and I could be facing that way. The X-Wing could be facing the other way with a TIE Fighter and X-Wing, and as long as I press the button to fire, a hit is going to land on the X-Wing. There is no positioning. There's no way to dodge. You know what was the most fun thing about playing with LEGO spaceships as a kid? Pretending you dodged your friend's attacks. Like, oh, you missed me, you didn't hit me, you're gonna have to snake around and run around the room and play with it, right? Like, that was part of the fun of LEGO. And you cannot do that with Star Wars Smart Play, because I could be in a different room, and as long as they're like connected via Bluetooth, which is like a pretty good range, I will say the tech on these is like decent, like it's a pretty good range, you can fire and it will just hit me in a different room. So that was a major thing. The other thing is that there was a major part of Star Wars Smart Play where you had this like green hammer, and when you held it up to the smart brick on the side of the ship, when it recognized the color green, it would make like a clanking noise, like it would go tick tick tick, and it would make a repair noise. But guess what? this did not actually repair your vehicle in combat. No, it like does not affect your health bar at all, which is insane. Like I was like, why even have that if it doesn't affect your health bar? There's another thing with refueling. You could hold up the color blue and it was a fuel knob and you could fuel up your Star Wars Smart Play ships. But fuel is not a thing. It's not like you're gonna run out of fuel. There's no indicator as you fly your ship around that tells you to refuel, because I actually think that would be a little lame. Like imagine you're a kid flying around your spaceship and it's like starts flashing and it's like go home and refuel. So I just think that the whole refueling concept was pretty ill-advised. Like it's not super fun to just put a blue refueling pump by the Smart Brick and hear it gurgle. Like I don't think that offered me like a ton of fun play potential there as an adult or as a kid, and it just has nothing to do with the play. There's no interactivity there. And the biggest thing, I feel, is that in order to play with these smart minifigures, you had to take the Smart Brick and put it next to the minifigure. So that means that if you want your minifigures to make noises, you need to hold the Smart Brick and you also need to hold the minifigure. And then if you want two minifigures to talk, you now need to be holding four things. And it just got really complicated, right? Like, why would a kid want to carry around a brick that makes the noises of the minifigure when the entire point of play is that like, oh, the minifigure is the one making the noises, right? Like it's the minifig talking. And then of course you get to the actual sounds a Smart Brick makes and it just goes, and it doesn't sound like a human, and it doesn't even get Darth Vader's breathing right because there's actually not a speaker, like a traditional speaker in these. It's just a synthesizer. It's just a synthesizer that synthesizes digital notes together. So it's almost like playing an 8-bit piano or a 16-bit piano and trying to make human vocal noises out of it. So the entire concept, I think, was very ill-advised. I think the only time the Smart Brick sounded good for LEGO Star Wars was on the very rare occasions when music played, like at the Cantina Band and the Emperor's Throne, and when you put Darth Vader in a ship, it plays a little bit of the Imperial March, and I think that was like neat. You know, it could kind of play notes, because it is. This is just like a music instrument. It is literally just a musical instrument playing notes and stringing them together. So that was the major complaint about Star Wars Smart Play. I cannot believe this, but count all of the points I just mentioned, literally every single point is fixed when it comes to actually playing with Pokemon Smart Play. I can't believe it. And this is not like, this is almost infuriating to me that Star Wars Smart Play was this bad, because this isn't LEGO going, oh look, like people didn't like Star Wars Smart Play, it's time to go back to the drawing board, how can we make Smart Play better? These sets were finalized well before Star Wars Smart Play launched, like the way that LEGO set development works. These LEGO sets in particular, because they have electronics in them, were probably completed by like this time last year or even earlier than that, and they're just getting into production. Like, it is insane to me that with zero actual feedback from the March wave, they somehow managed to fix like 99% of my issues with this brick. So first of all, the brick is actually part of the Pokemon, right? So instead of having a smart minifigure that you have to put next to it, instead, there are blocks here that you place the brick in the Pokemon that actually kind of sounds like Pikachu as well, and then the brick is part of the character. So you don't need to hold the Pokemon and the brick next to it. This is now part of the character, and it makes noises and so on and so forth when you move him around, which is exactly what you would want for the Smart Brick. The other thing is that unlike LEGO Star Wars, when the Pokemon are by themselves, they don't look that bad because there isn't a gigantic gap in their chests for the Smart Brick. Like, imagine if they release Charmander here, right? But the way they release him is with a gigantic hole in his chest, so you know that you literally can only play with this with the Smart Brick. That was Star Wars Smart Play. There was no attempt to cover up the holes. There was no way to actually be able to cover them up with anything decent included in the set. You literally were just out of luck. Like you just are cooked if you try to do it, right? So that was a major downside to that. The other really cool thing though is that they actually have really good integration with each other. So first of all, you can put the two characters by each other and then they just kind of start to talk to each other, right? Like you can set down Pikachu and Smart Charmander and they just kind of talk to each other. You can hear them on my mic. They're conversing with each other right now and it sounds like they're talking. They're making different noises. They talk very often. And the other thing is that because these noises are not coming out of humans, I am much more accepting of the noises they're making because, first of all, I'm holding something cute, they're making cute, high-pitched animal sounds, and I feel like immediately I like that a lot better than Star Wars Smart Play, which has minifigures making really awkward noises. But then when it comes to actually playing with someone else, this is literally where the fun begins. Basic duels, which I can demonstrate right now, start by shaking the characters, and once you shake them to initiate a duel, which you can hear as we start a duel here. Come on. They're just doing charge attacks now against... Okay, there we go. You shake them to initiate a duel, music starts playing, you can land hits, right? Basic hits. You imagine you're playing with each other, you're landing basic hits against each other. But there's different types of hits you can do. Instead of having just one blaster, you can have a charge attack. So you can charge up your characters, and you can launch charge attacks at them. You can determine the winner that way, which is really cool. So like, I'm gonna set one aside, and it actually sounds really interesting. Like, I can take Pikachu here, shake him, and now it sounds like there's electricity charging, and he launched an electrified attack, which is really cool. But here's the thing, like, that is already interesting enough, right? The other thing, though, is that for Pokemon Smart Play, unlike LEGO Star Wars, where it's like, I don't know if I would expect a speeder bike to be able to shoot down the Millennium Falcon, but you can, because it just treats all the vehicles as the same. There's actually type advantages and disadvantages for Smart Play Pokemon. So just like the actual Pokemon games, if you play with a Pokemon that is more powerful in type against another, it is easier for you to defeat that other Pokemon with your attacks. Like, your attacks are stronger if you play that way, which is really cool. I think that's something that I was really missing from Star Wars Smart Play. But it gets even better. Not only are there differences in type advantage or type disadvantage, there are actual fixed ways to level up your Pokemon during one play session. And that comes in the form of training. There are 3 different training posts outfitted throughout the different sets. There's one with the Charizard set, and that's this one right here. There's one in the Gengar set, and that's this tree over here. And then there's one in Pikachu's house, and that's this kind of training dummy right here. And so the way it works is that if you initiate a training session, which you're gonna see me do a lot throughout this video because it's actually really fun and satisfying, you can use your Pokemon to be like punching the training dummy and training themselves up, and then their attacks get much stronger. And if you just spam the training, like, and you fight an untrained Pokemon, you can like one-shot them. Like I can have Jigglypuff one-shot Mewtwo if Jigglypuff hits the gym for like a few minutes. And I think that's actually really cool. But then that's even more to it, because not only can you make your attacks more powerful, but you can heal mid-fight. The Charizard set introduces a healing potion here, where much like the actual Pokemon in universe, you can take the healing potion and heal your Pokemon in the middle of a fight. And they all have different colors going from green to red, showcasing their health bars. So you can see the health of your Pokemon over time. And I feel like there's just so much more adaptability to this system. Like, this genuinely feels like an actual game. I know if I was a kid and I was playing with these with my friends, we'd be fighting over the heal potion. I definitely know that if I wanted to play with these with my friends, we'd put the heal potion in the middle of the room, and then we'd be like scrambling to grab it in the middle of a duel while launching attacks, and that sounds so much more fun to me than like facing the opposite direction of my friend and still landing a hit on them because I pressed the shoot button, where all the laser blasts sound the same and they deal the same amount of damage, and there's a fixed same amount of health for every vehicle. So altogether, they just fixed so many problems with Smart Play Pokemon. Like, this is actually, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but genuinely a lot of fun to play with. And there's other things too, like there's a treasure chest you can find that makes like a gold coin noise. There's a little music thing that can play when you reveal Pikachu from his house. There is a music cue that plays when you discover Mew and this wall falls down. Like, there's so many different things. Even the vehicles have them. And I think that's like the lamest part of Pokemon Smart Play is when they tried to integrate vehicles. Like, there's this Pokemon drone and there's a slot for a Smart Brick, and this is like a very Star Wars Smart Play thing, right? Like, it makes a flying noise, and you can push up the radar dish, and it scans that there's blue on the side, so it makes the radar dish sound. But honestly, aside from that, like, I think the vehicles are the lamest parts of it. You don't need to play with the vehicles. Like, it is all about the Pokemon combat. The vehicles are just kind of extra. And the fact that the vehicles were the best part of Star Wars Smart Play, and they were still really lame, goes to show just how much better Pokemon Smart Play is compared to Star Wars, where here, the vehicles are the worst part, because they're super boring, but they still make cool sounds, and they're fun to swish around, and you can hear their engines. But I don't care about the vehicles. I care about the Pokemon fighting each other. And the fighting combat is actually a lot of fun. So I honestly feel that Smart Play Pokemon succeeds on almost every front where Star Wars Smart Play fails. I can't believe I'm saying it, and no, this does not mean I'm really hyped now and I'm like, okay, well now it's time for Smart Play Ninjago and let's give Smart Play to everything, right? Like, I'm not saying that. I'm definitely not like fully on the side of Smart Play. I still do maintain that I think that we did not need Smart Play in order to be able to play with LEGO. I think that we would have been able to play with them just fine without any electronics, which is kind of what LEGO is all about. But if there was one theme If there was literally one theme to introduce Smart Play, this was the theme, because the Pokemon are collectible, you can play with them without the Smart Bricks, but the Smart Bricks actually add a really cool battle game electronically with every set as an option if you want. Only 2 out of the many sets you see here actually have Smart Bricks, and that is wonderful. I can't believe I'm glazing Smart Brick sets. Like, I genuinely, it feels like I've entered another dimension. This is insane to me, but don't worry, because I'm sure that next year, for those who do want to hear me, like, cook the Smart Brick, I think that's coming with Ninjago Smart Play. So unless I'm very surprised, I think that the only reason why Smart Play Pokemon works so well for me is because it fits the concept of Pokemon so well. You have collectible, buildable characters. You put the Smart Brick inside the characters, so you don't have to hold them next to each other to make noises, which undoubtedly Ninjago Smart Play is going to have Smart Kai, and you're going to have to put him next to the brick to make him talk. I don't like that. But Smart Cryptor, you know? But here, you have the Smart Brick in the Pokemon. They make cute noises because they're cute animals. They're not supposed to be speaking English, so it's more excusable to hear come out of a Pokemon because, you know, Pikachu might make that sound versus Luke Skywalker. He would not do that. He would not say that. And I feel like that is a huge benefit to Pokemon. Like, they can get away with the concept of the Smart Brick so much because these are cute creatures that make silly little noises that the Smart Brick can kind of make, and I think that's nice. So, I think I've said enough about this for the intro. I cannot believe that I am actually positive on these sets and genuinely feel like a lot of these are good value. We are actually in a bizarro world right now, but those are my honest opinions. And again, like, I'm not part of the LEGO Ambassador Network. I haven't been for a long time now. I bought all these sets with my own money when they launched, and I'm not like biased in any way. I was very critical of the Smart Play Star Wars sets, but I actually really like these. So with that, I think it's time that we now jump in and go into an in-depth review of every single one of these sets. I'm going to go from smallest to largest, starting with Jigglypuff and ending with Charizard here, and then we'll look at the GWP, the Ditto as Squirtle. He is right over here at the very end of the video as well, so you get your full coverage. One other thing I will note is that they did release a couple of Smart Play Pokemon polybags. There was a trainer supply polybag, which I actually just bought at Target, but I did not bring with me. It is at my house back in Washington. I'm in New York right now, so I will not be focusing on the polybags in this video. There's a lot of other polybags that the images have surfaced on online. There are like single Smart Tile polybags, which like allow you to, I guess, get trophies and stuff like that, which I feel like they're going to give away at in-person events, which I was making a lot of fun of when they were first released, but I can't believe this, but I'm actually kind of excited for those because it feels like those are like DLC to the Smart Brick game, which is kind of cool. Like, now that the game is actually kind of fun and there's type advantages and there's healing and there's training, I kind of want to play this now. Like, I want to see what the other things do. Bring it on. So I'm excited to get those. We don't have any information on when those single polybags will release, so stay tuned for that. And there's a couple of other things, like in most regions outside of the US, there was a GWP of, I think it was a Master Ball in the same scale as this gigantic Pokeball. Why does this exist, by the way? Why is this giant Pokeball in like one of the sets? Somebody please explain. I don't really know. It's not really in scale with the rest of them, but there is a polybag with another Pokeball in that style, and that all kind of ties together with the Smart Play stuff. But for now, we're just taking a look at the standard retail sets, and without further ado, let's start off with Jigglypuff's Concert. Our first set here is the smallest of the wave, but I honestly really like it as a set concept. This is set number 72159 Jigglypuff Concert. It retails for $15 US, 13 British pounds or 15 euros, and comes with 88 pieces. And as it is literally the smallest Smart Play set yet. Much like most of the LEGO Pokemon sets, it does not actually include a Smart Brick. That is basically just an add-on if you choose to purchase some of the larger sets, but honestly, I actually really like that. As I mentioned in the overview, one of the best things about Smart Play Pokemon is that these can really stand on their own. And while $15 does seem like a good amount of money to pay for a really small build, I actually think that this is relatively okay value for what it is. First of all, one of the things that you will notice when building with any of the Smart Play Pokemon are the vast amounts of new molds and pieces introduced. And it's actually really interesting because you would think that For a brand new launch of LEGO Pokemon, there would be a ton of super specialized molds that you really can't use outside of just the Pokemon theme. But that's really not the case here. Instead, they have introduced a massive new expansion to the LEGO Curved system, which means that there are a ton of pieces introduced for Smart Play Pokemon that I feel like are just going to be really useful going forwards in the LEGO portfolio. Jigglypuff is an example, introducing some of these larger sloped elements here, and this has a ton of them, some of them printed, some of them not, and even on the ears of Jigglypuff, they managed to include a couple of new components, one side which is printed and the other side which is plain and unprinted, which actually cost them a little more to include a printed and unprinted version, but it allows you to use it in other build applications other than just for its intended purpose, and I actually really appreciate it. Now, the rest of the build is honestly very, very lackluster. This is barely above the level of a polybag build for the side builds here. You basically have a couple of speakers with drum lacquered gold speaker elements, which are okay, but honestly nothing super crazy. And then you also have a little microphone for Jigglypuff to sing, which is cute, but honestly, you're really just buying it for the Pokemon. $15 does seem a little high to me for being able to get this, but again, the entire point is that you can upgrade it with Smart Play. So, Jigglypuff's mouth comes off here, and you can see a printed smart tag on the inside. This is also where you're going to see one of the brand new plate elements, which they've introduced across most of the new Pokemon here, that allow you to very easily remove these components. And I'm going to take a smart brick from some of the other larger sets and demonstrate just how this works. Picking up a smart brick here, the way it works is you place it inside Jigglypuff, like so, and then you can place the printed mouth component just on the center of the smart brick there. It looks a little bit awkward with the smart brick underneath it, but it allows you to actually be able to play with this and make noises. So the first thing that you heard, probably when I placed the brick, was the initialization sound, so I'm going to stop talking now so you can actually hear what that sounds like by itself. You know, it doesn't really say Jigglypuff, but honestly, I kind of accept these sounds more like coming from animals than I did for the Star Wars sets where a lot of these smart minifigures made these garbled electronic noises and they clearly were not humans talking. It's a little more acceptable when Pokemon already kind of speak gibberish. And let's hear what the other sounds this one can make. That is the charge and blast sound. Jigglypuff can jump as well. There's another blast, and you can kind of play around with it. There's a lot of things that you can do, like setting Jigglypuff on its side, and then letting it be for a while allows Jigglypuff to fall asleep. This is a feature that LEGO Mario had as well, so you can hear Jigglypuff snoring right now, and it's actually really cute. I feel like the noises here are actually really good for the Smart Brick. I mean, it's definitely a lot better than Star Wars, and you can listen to that here. Again, pretty cute, and then you can wake her up. There you go. And it all makes noises that you would kind of expect a Pokemon to make, and it almost makes me feel that Smart Play really should have just been introduced as an add-on to Pokemon, and they should not have brought any other themes into it. Looking at you, Ninjago. But, of course, having one Smart Brick is only half of the fun, because you do need to get a second one in order to do any battles, and of course, we're going to demonstrate that a little bit later on. So, for now, I'm going to wrap up this quick review of the Jigglypuff set. I think that this is actually a pretty solid and cute build. For $15, it does seem a little high for just how small Jigglypuff is as an item. Like, this is really small. I can palm Jigglypuff in my hand, and it does feel closer to what I feel like a $10 LEGO set value should be, or like maybe even $8, but $15 with the smart tag, with all the new pieces and prints, I can sort of see where they're coming from. It's not the best value, but it's a good starter for Smart Play. Let's move on though to some of the larger sets. Next up for our small sets is 72155 Berry Bash with Bulbasaur and Bidoof, and this retails for $20 US, which is actually really good value for this set, 20 euros or 17 or 18 British pounds, and it comes with 240 pieces. Now, I'm gonna be honest, unlike a lot of the other Smart Play sets, especially the non-Pokemon ones, I feel like this is actually a really decent value and a good toy on its own. For $20, you get 2 different Pokemon of small size, but still 2 Pokemon that you can play with, plus a few accessories and a bit of scenery to add on to the storytelling. And I feel like this is a really great set because, first and foremost, you don't need the Smart Play to enjoy this. Unlike LEGO Star Wars, where you really would not be able to enjoy a lot of those spaceships which have big gaps in them, and the Smart minifigures without having the Smart Brick as an add-on, this just feels like a set that you can buy for $20, and you do not need to care about the Smart Brick whatsoever, but still have fun with this set. Obviously, it's an added-on bonus if you do want to buy it as an accessory, but you don't need the Smart Brick to enjoy this, and I feel like that is how Smart Play should have been advertised to begin with, similar to how they integrated LEGO Boost in Ninjago's Stormbringer, the Dragon set in 2018, where you could just buy the dragon, have fun with it on its own, or you could choose to kind of add on technology onto it. I feel like that's how Smart Play should have been advertised, and I feel like it probably would have been much better received. I feel like LEGO flew a little bit too close to the sun, hyping it up as the biggest innovation since the minifigure, and that just overshadowed everything and made people have a negative opinion on Smart Play, whereas a set like this is a ton of fun by itself, and you literally do not need the Smart Play to enjoy this whatsoever. And so, as such, I'm not going to integrate the Smart Play yet, and we're just going to look at the set on its own. Bulbasaur right here is really cute. I think that this was a really smart choice to include such a popular character, such a popular Pokemon in a small set like this. It allows kids who just have a little bit of pocket allowance to be able to buy this and get a Pokemon that they really are excited about. I know as a kid, I would have been really hyped about this. And it's a really cute figure. This introduces a few other new elements. The most important one is the Pokemon face piece, which so far only appears fully printed. It is a 4x4 rounded surface element, kind of continuing the trend of Pokemon introducing all these new elements to the LEGO Curve family, but even underneath it, there are so many interesting new pieces, like a 1x4 curved off plate here, like half plate, half tile, which is super interesting. And there are so many pieces here. I believe there are 19 new elements introduced in the LEGO Pokemon sets. I could be wrong on that exact number, but it's an insane amount. And honestly, I think that it's really fantastic how they were able to do this. New Elementary, which is a website that does deep dives onto brand new LEGO pieces, put out an excellent article analyzing every single one of the brand new Pokemon elements, so I definitely recommend you check that out if you want to learn more about how you can use them in the LEGO system, because one of the great things is that other than the face prints, which obviously are printed, none of these elements are very specialized. In fact, they're very basic building pieces, which I'm sure are going to be incredibly helpful for the LEGO building system going forwards. Now, there is a smart tag incorporated here as well, so the entire way this works is you're supposed to take the smart brick, put it inside, and then put the face on top of it, so it just kind of fits right on the inside of Bulbasaur there. You kind of have to rip off his face to put it in, but you know, for a Smart Play compatible set, I actually think that makes a lot of sense for what you want to do, and thankfully, it's kind of hidden away, so it doesn't feel like there's a giant gap in really any of the Pokemon here. The building techniques are actually pretty clever. There's some good studs on the side techniques going on for the back legs, and while it is a bit awkward to have kind of the underside of the creature and be fully exposed like that with the gigantic holes on the back, I think that they did the best they could to make this be relatively compact, and of course the kind of growth on the back here with the bulb, the leafy area on the back of Bulbasaur works really well too, and I love the building techniques used for it with studs on the side, some of the relatively newer curved elements that they also use in themes like Speed Champions, all to make up the shaping of this character. Bidoof, on the other hand, is a very goofy looking creature, but it's honestly not nearly as complex as Bulbasaur. It very much is just this kind of squarey, rectangular, curved off form, and that is something I want to talk about as we jump into the aesthetics of the Pokemon here. I'm gonna be honest, when I first saw the Smart Play Pokemon, I was not the biggest fan of the aesthetics. I felt like this was a very corporate decision where someone at LEGO said, okay, look, LEGO is known to be square, and bricks are square, so in order for the average consumer who doesn't really care about LEGO to see this on the shelf and identify it as LEGO, we need to make all the Pokemon into rectangles and squares, and I really didn't like that. And I didn't like it when they did it for LEGO Mario, and I can't believe it took LEGO Mario 7 years of the course builder system to finally get minifigures next year, but again, I felt like that was, again, that LEGO corporate mindset of, okay, we need to make this look more square, even though we have the parts to make them be a lot more, quote-unquote, realistic, to make them feel a lot more well-proportioned. But honestly, after building all the Smart Play Pokemon sets, my opinion kind of changed, and I felt that, in actuality, I feel like these are nailing their own aesthetic. It is a Lego-y aesthetic where it is meant to look blocky. It is meant to look like that. But if you can get past that, they actually all fit within the same system. They're all relatively to scale with each other, which is really nice. And even though something like Bidoof kind of just looks like a bread loaf, or it's really funny, it's just kind of like a rectangle, I can kind of get behind it in context of all of the other Pokemon. So that is something that honestly I feel is not as bad as I initially thought it would be. The other thing that they did try to incorporate on many of the Pokemon, not all of them, but many of them, are two studs on the top, and I feel like that does actually retain that Lego DNA. It reminds me of the buildable Lego dinosaurs like from Jurassic World, which have some studs on the back, and even though this is built in, it allows you to maybe add on accessories in the future. None of the Pokemon have them really, but imagine if you wanted to make a Pokemon wearing a hat or have somebody riding a Pokemon, you can go ahead and do that, and I feel like the studs on the top just allow you to have that Lego feel onto them, where the studs are always on the top of most Lego animals, just like horses, and it kind of continues that trend there, but also kind of gives them that customization aspect. If you want to add the smart brick to this figure, you rip Bidoof's head off like so. There is a smart tag on the inside, and one thing that I didn't mention when we were looking at the smart tags earlier is it actually showcases the type and the number of the Pokemon on the smart tag, which I think is really, really cool. It kind of lets you build up your own Pokédex by having these smart tags be listed out like that. So that is a nice touch there. I think that's pretty cool. And altogether, while I definitely prefer Bulbasaur over Bidoof, I think that they're both a lot of fun to play with. Now, the actual build of the set is the berry blast part, so you have kind of this factory where you can pick different berries from the plants here, and I love the usage of different elements. You have a white recolored Z-Blob that first appeared in LEGO Botanicals, you have a teal Bionicle Voodoo Ball Joint that first was introduced in Bionicle 2001, and even Throwbots and Sliders before that, and then you have a little bit of a flower component with the LEGO Friends dot element on the bottom, which really just allows you to have a variety in the different plants. So as part of play, you pick off one of the plants, you put it inside this little mixer here, you close the lid, it's super basic, but you spin the gear to allow you to mix up the plant and have it be kind of rolling around in there, and eventually the way that you play with it is that, look at that, you've created a little smoothie for your Pokemon or maybe human characters to drink from. It pours into the smoothie here, and then you can pretend your Pokemon characters are drinking from the smoothie. It's super basic, but honestly, I feel like this is such a classic LEGO play feature that actually, again, for the smart brick, makes you use your imagination. There are no smart tags on the berries, there's no smart tag on the machine, you don't need to take the smart brick and have the Pokemon like be near it to be drinking from it. You literally just use your imagination, which seems like a novel concept now, I understand that, especially for LEGO Smart Play, but the entire hypothesis, the entire thesis behind this set is just using your imagination to create play scenarios. Like every LEGO set really should be. You don't need the smart brick in order to facilitate this level of play, which I really appreciate. But if you do have the smart brick, there are a few things you can do with it, and I think this is a good example of demonstrating our very first duel. And the duels will only get more and more complex as things go on, so this is probably the most simple version. Let me go ahead and grab two smart bricks here, and we are going to showcase what they look like and what sounds they make when placed in the characters. So we're going to start off with Bidoof here. I'm going to rip his face off, take off the head, place it on the smart brick, and then let's hear what he sounds like when you load the smart brick in. Okay, more of a generic noise compared to some of the other ones, but that's what he sounds like. You can make him kind of laugh and jump around. As you can see there, you can also make him charge up and launch an attack, which is going to be really useful in combat. And you do that by kind of shaking him rapidly and then launch. Like so. So there's a lot of different things you can do, and you can also make him fall asleep. So if you put him down on the ground here, there is positional indication on the smart bricks that allows you to know that he's sleeping, and that's what the snore sounds like. And I like how the snores are actually kind of different per character, so it does sound like there are different ones. And let's wake him up. There you go. Now let's see what Bulbasaur sounds like. So again, you rip off the Bulbasaur head, and sometimes you might like accidentally take off some pieces with it. I've noticed that when playing with these and putting the smart bricks in, it's not the most optimal solution, but you know, it works as best as it can. But I'm going to put the Bulbasaur head on the smart brick, and let's hear what it sounds like with it inside. Again, a bit of a different noise. Now, if you just put these next to each other, they're going to start talking to each other, which is really cute, which you can hear there. Seems like one of them just told a joke and the other one is laughing, and while I still do maintain that these feel a little bit too electronic sounding for my taste, like it kind of sounds like they're robots and not actually animals, I think they're doing the best they can with the Smart Brick synthesizer. I don't love it, and Pokemon literally originated from games and trading cards, so because this is like 8-bit synthesized sounds, you could have just had them play the exact sounds of the game, and I don't know why they didn't do that, other than wanting to maybe make them sound like they had a bit more personality, like they're all saying different things right now, but I don't know, I feel like it would have been really cool, at least for initialization, to have them say the original sounds from the game. And wow, they're really talking here. These are very different sounds, but now let's initiate a battle. So the way you initiate a battle is you shake both Pokemon, and I'm sorry, it did sound like they were very friendly with each other and telling each other jokes, but now we are going to force these animals to fight each other. Okay, so now the battle is initiated. They start playing music. You can see that, and when you register a hit, it flashes red. Let's do a charge attack. And Bidoof died. So Bulbasaur wins. You play a little victory sound. He plays a little bit of annoyed, disgruntled grunt that he lost the fight, and now we can try it again. We're going to initiate another fight. You can hear the music start, and now Bidoof is going to attack Bulbasaur. Come on, attack. You know, it's kind of getting it. And now we're going to do a charge attack. Boom! And that was a heavy, heavy hit. So now we actually have a health bar. So Bidoof's health bar is green, Bulbasaur's health bar is red, which is something that the Star Wars Smart Play sets, for whatever reason, did not have. There's also a difference in type effectiveness for LEGO Pokemon, so it actually gets pretty complicated as you go on, and there's even more artifacts you can give your Pokemon to train them and heal them in other sets that actually makes this into a lot more complicated of a game than any of the other Smart Play sets so far. We're going to charge up our own attack here by shaking him, and then launch. Now you can see that the health bar on Bidoof is yellow, whereas Bulbasaur's is still red. So now, let's let him go at it. And it looks like Bidoof won this one. And Bulbasaur lets out a disgruntled grunt. That is a very basic battle. It is probably the most basic out of any of the battles that you could do with Smart Play Pokemon. Again, there is a difference in the level of attacks and the health points that you can take away if you're going with one type that's stronger against another. So that is actually pretty cool. The one thing I will say is it's kind of annoying, like, to take off the Smart Brick. Like, you really have to rip it out of there, and now I've, like, partially disassembled Bulbasaur. I know they did their best to really only have it attached by 2 studs, but that is something I do want to point out. But then again, you can place it back on the inside like so, and then your Pokemon are ready to play on their own, and you can put the Smart Bricks away and have some non-electronic play, which is the best thing about the set. So in conclusion, I feel like for $20, this is actually really solid. I liked the play that it was set up for. I thought it was a ton of fun, and honestly, I am a lot more positive on this than the Star Wars Smart Play sets. So again, we're set number 2 in, and if you're expecting a lot more negativity, I'm sorry, you can go rewatch my Star Wars Smart Play video, but that was actually kind of fun, and it's gonna even get more fun as we go on to some of the other sets. It's not perfect. I still think a lot of the Smart Brick and a lot of the inception behind it is pretty flawed, but I can appreciate and respect something like this. So let's move on. Our next smaller set here is 72157 Charmander and Geodude's Cavern Clash. It comes with 198 pieces and also retails for $20, 20 euros, or 18 British pounds, which again, is pretty good value. One of my favorite things about this set is that it incorporates 2 very iconic classic Pokemon. Obviously, Charizard is a big one, or Charmander is a really big one here, and this is something that has been around in Pokemon from the very beginning, so it's really cool to have a very iconic Pokemon like this be included in a small $20 set. And even Geodude, I feel like, was also around from the very beginning, and it is a very iconic Pokemon. So you have 2 characters that are quite iconic in the Pokemon world, and then you actually have a pretty substantial build. So dare I say this might actually be even better value than the last one. The last set we looked at did have a much smaller side build, and that's probably because Bidoof was like a lot larger than Geodude, but I feel like you get 2 great characters here. and a pretty fun and interesting side build to play with. So before we take a look at the side build, because there's actually a few fun play features here that again allow you to use your imagination and not have to just play with them with the Smart Brick, let's take a look at the two Pokemon first. Charmander introduces even more pieces to the LEGO Smart Play Pokemon ecosystem, namely a brand new hand element. And this is really interesting because it is one of the most versatile new elements they introduced. There's a clip on one side, there is an anti-stud on the, or there's a stud on the other, there's anti-studs on the bottom, there are bar connection allowances on the inside of this piece. I feel like this is just going to be really useful in mock building to allow things to connect up in interesting ways. Of course, there are also a few other new elements included, like the printed mouth component here is actually a larger element that I don't know if I can take apart right now, but it basically slopes all the way around. It's kind of a combination of a few tiles and slope pieces all into one element. Same with the eyes here. They are printed on a half of the standard face component, and this one actually does have some pieces on the underside, so it allows you to build around it. And altogether, again, it's a really cool expansion into the LEGO curvature system. I feel like this is a really good depiction of what they wanted to accomplish with the Smart Play Pokemon style. You have the two studs on the top of the head, which is indicative of the rest of them to kind of fit in the LEGO animal lineup. And then Geodude has the same thing. Geodude is a lot simpler because you just have the two studs there, and then of course it is just kind of this rectangular square thing, but I do like the building techniques being used to replicate the big fists there and the muscles on the arms. You kind of have them bulging underneath there, which is really nice. Same with the studs on the head, and then of course you have the option to have him kind of hovering above the ground with a transparent, clear brick element. But if you actually want to integrate the Smart Brick, you can take all of that out and just have the Smart Brick sticking out of the bottom instead, which is quite nice. And then of course you have the Smart Tag on the inside of that as well. But before we even integrate Smart Play, this is actually just a really fun playset. So the way this works is you've got Charmander here, and there's actually a disc launcher element that they first introduced for LEGO Legends of Chima Fire vs. Ice in 2014. And what you do is you place one of your Pokemon here, and then you can launch the discs at your opponent just by moving him back and forth. Just like this, you can launch the discs. Now that disc has completely gone flying, but you can reload it, place another one in here, and try to hit Charmander with them. So boom, even if you don't get him with the disc, you're still going to be able to use the fist to knock over one of the rocks. So you can actually launch like a three-pronged attack here. So boom, you have one rock there, and then boom, you have the other rock there, and then the way it works is that you have your disc in here, and if you move it fast enough, you can actually launch the disc like so. So there's like 3 different things you can do to attack your opponents here. Geodude clearly has the advantage on this set, and I think that the play features here are just really clever. Like, there are 3 different things you can do that are built into launch, and it doesn't feel way too like overbuilt in terms of like obviously flashing red, like spin me here to launch this feature or push this button to launch it. It's very built into the environment, which is really cool. But then Charmander can also try to uncover some hidden gems. So if you launch this button here, it's a classic LEGO play feature. The rock will go flying, and you can find a power crystal on the inside, the same ones they used for LEGO City Space back in 2024. So this is actually maybe one of my favorite side builds of the entire wave. Like, I feel like they did a really, really good job at making this very playable, allowing you to do all sorts of different things with the build. There's even a little lantern to add on to the scenery. I mean, this is probably like one of the parts that didn't really need to be there, but then again, you can kind of use the lantern instead to be able to launch in different ways, in different directions. So there's so many different things you can do with the set. I really like it. I think it's very clever, and you can launch the lantern as a projectile towards your enemies as well. And I just think it's a really cool build that you can actually use to have imaginative play. And look at all the fun that we had throwing rocks at Charmander, throwing the discs at him without having to integrate the Smart Brick whatsoever. And that is the best part of the set. This may legitimately be one of my favorites. Like, I know we're still in the small $20 range, but this is actually like a good playset. I would have had a lot of fun with this as a kid, and I just had a lot of fun with it now. But now let's actually integrate the Smart Bricks and showcase what all the Pokemon sound like. So we are going to remove this component here for Geodude and take a Smart Brick and place it inside of him. Okay, he has like a lower sounding voice, lower pitched voice, which is what I would expect. And now let's take a look at Charmander and see what he sounds like. And the way it works is that you have these brick pieces attached with a plate to a tile by a single stud, so you can place the tile on the center of the smart brick and allow it to still be able to have a little bit of color on the center of the brick. So let's hear what that sounds like. There you go. And now let's allow them to talk to each other. It's pretty cute. I think it actually kind of works for what they're trying to do, and you can see what it sounds like when they're laughing with each other and talking, but of course, we got to initiate a battle. So let's see what the battle sounds look like. All right, we are now in a battle. We are going to do a much more rapid battle now and see who is going to emerge the victor and who will meet their doom. Big attack there. Let's do a charge attack here. All right, who won? Looks like Geodude won that one, and again, it's very simple play, and especially for this level of Pokemon play before we get to the larger sets that actually introduce healing and training and have a lot more impact for type advantages against one versus the other, this is the most basic battle you can do, but it is a lot of fun. I do, however, have to caveat that by saying that because LEGO does not sell the smart bricks independently, you will need to buy either the large Charizard set, which comes with 2 smart bricks for I think it's around $120, or you're going to have to buy 2 $70 sets in order to get 2 smart bricks to have the experience I just showcased. So it absolutely is much more of a premium to be able to do what I just did. And I'm gonna be honest, for a set like this, that legitimately is a ton of fun on its own, with a really good play feature on its own that did not need smart play. Like, I did not need to have that level of battling with each other to have fun with the set. I almost thought it was more satisfying to see like the rocks being launched. Was it really worth integrating the smart brick into this? I honestly don't think so. I don't think that the smart brick added like $100 some worth of value to this $20 set that was already a lot of fun to play with. It's a good add-on, but you don't need it to have fun. And that's what smart play should be. This is the epitome of a smart play set done right, if that's even possible. But now let's move on to maybe one of the smart play sets not done so right. Moving away from the $20 sets, here is our first $30 Smart Play Pokemon set of the wave. It is 72156 Trainer's Buggy Adventure with Squirtle. With 320 pieces, it retails for $30, 30 euros, or 25 British pounds, which on paper sounds like a pretty decent deal, but honestly, I am a little let down by this set, and I feel like it would have greatly benefited by the addition of another Pokemon. Now, I think the thing that bugs me about the set is that while it is a fun enough playset, and I think the Buggy is cute, there is, first of all, as far as I can tell, and I'm not the biggest Pokemon expert in the world, but I have asked some diehard Pokemon friends of mine, I don't think this is a real thing in universe, whereas a lot of the other play features of the other sets actually do reference something in the Pokemon world. There isn't really anything like this. I remember that in the anime, Squirtle was like a firefighter, or there were multiple Squirtles on a firefighting team at some point. I don't think they drove a car around, but again, it doesn't really matter. Like, this is still, it could be a fun set without having any attachment to the Pokemon canon, but so many of the pieces of this $30 set go into this car that is not super exciting, that I feel like they could have made the car a little smaller, made it a bit smaller of a Buggy, and included one other Pokemon for Squirtle to battle or interact with. Maybe they could have included another water-type Pokemon so they could kind of team up to stop the fire. Maybe they could have included a fire-type who might have accidentally started the fire, and then you have a play possibility there. For $30, it does just feel like a bit of a step down that you only get one Pokemon in this set versus the $20 sets, which actually give you 2. Now, I also do understand why LEGO did this. LEGO figured that Squirtle was popular enough to market a set all by himself. And LEGO was probably correct. I think that that is almost certainly why so many of the pieces on this larger set get put in to a car that isn't super exciting, that I don't think a lot of people really care about, and Squirtle, which is a very popular Pokemon. I feel like this set very much has like the LEGO Marvel syndrome, where they will come up with some random silly build that nobody cares about, but it has one superhero you really care about in the set, and they figure that it's going to be enough to sell the set, and they're usually correct. And this is kind of the same thing. So to me, I'm not super excited about this set. I think Squirtle is great, but also there is a GWP that we're going to take a look at the end of this, because it doesn't really have a retail price of Ditto posing as Squirtle that I actually think is maybe like a little more fun than this one because of the very goofy face, and that one is the identical build just with a different face. So I don't really know if this is the most exciting set. Squirtle on his own, though, is actually really nicely done. It might be one of my favorite builds out of all the Pokemon. It's so good, they included him basically in a set twice. First of all, you have the Mixel joint attached tail, which I think works really well. There's printing on the side of the tail there for the tiles to showcase kind of the swirl on the tail, which is really nice. You do have the option to obviously add on the smart brick, and you do that by just removing the block in the center. You can see the smart tag on the inside of the Pokemon there, and so altogether I do think that this is a very nicely built up figure, especially with the shell on the back. Like, the entire shell on the back and the build of the shell is using some studs on the side building techniques, some new curved elements on the inverted curve sense this time. Almost every single Pokemon set we've looked at has subsequently had even more new elements, which is really, really cool. And then of course, those two studs on the top of the head, which allow you to be able to customize and add things on the top of Squirtle should you please. So I'm actually really pleased with this build. I think that it is a really solid Pokemon build. It's probably one of my favorites out of all the Pokemon builds so far. But then again, we do have the rest of the set to look at as well. So first of all, you have a bit of a remote control here with a sticker that showcases fires being identified, your water level, and I guess the GPS of the car. I don't know what the implication of this is. Like, I guess it implies that because Pokemon can't drive cars on their own, at least as far as I can tell, I believe that the intent is that, okay, this is supposed to be held by a trainer, like maybe you're the trainer, like the kid is the trainer, and you're supposed to pretend that you're basically using this control to remote control the vehicle that Squirtle is on. The vehicle also has water guns, which I guess Squirtle can use his like powers to refuel the water and refill the water, which are just simple stud shooters, and you can use those to kind of try to knock over the fire elements. These are the same pieces they introduce in a lot of LEGO City sets. They're just boat studs with fire sticking out of them. Nothing we haven't seen before. And one thing I do like about the set is that you do actually have steering. Like, you can actually steer this. You can rotate it around. There is steering on the Buggy. They use the LEGO Dreams, like the Dreams Season 3 fart element here as the back for the water exhaust, which I think works okay for the build. I'm not the biggest fan of this piece. I don't really love it. I don't know why they keep using it in sets, but they do use it here. There are some stickers being used for the license plate, water, heart, and Pokeball, which is quite nice. And of course, there is a smart tag, so you can choose to have a smart brick on this vehicle, which is where we're starting to get in the territory of like the LEGO Star Wars Smart Play vehicles, where you just have the exposed smart tag there. It's a little better because at least that's a spot for Squirtle to stand, so at least it like kind of looks hidden away, but I don't know. I feel like that is like maybe one of the most useless Smart Play integrations on any of these for Squirtle's car. I don't think any kid was super excited to make Squirtle's car light up and make sounds. Now, there is another very interesting component here, and this is our very first look at a Pokeball, which are scattered throughout the many sets. Personally, I think they should have just included one of these in like every set. I don't know why they chose to only include them in some, but the Pokeball is really interesting because it introduces a lot of very specific new components, but that also could be used for other applications. So you've got the Pokeball base, and the underside of it is a very weird anti-stud. It's the same anti-stud on the bottom of the LEGO Technic flipper elements and the ski elements for LEGO Technic big figures from like the 1980s, so that's really weird. It's also the same anti-stud component as a couple of other more modern pieces, but it's a weird choice to have it be that same style. And then you have a piece that is a lot more specialized for Pokemon. It is basically this 3x3 rounded component with a single rounded stud attachment on the center, but that could be useful for some studs on the side attachments. Again, you don't need to use it as a Pokeball. And then you have these 3x3 curved pieces, which are basically the combination of a few existing components, but put on there so there aren't so many lines that break up the Pokeball. So I honestly feel like these are quite nice. Again, the squared off aspect does kind of throw you off a little bit because, again, you are operating under this weird LEGO Smart Play Pokemon aesthetic where everything, for whatever reason, has to be somewhat rectangular and somewhat squared off. But for what it is, I actually think it's pretty nice. They're kind of collectible. It's fun to have like a handful of these, as you will get when you get all the sets. So that is a nice addition. But now let's take a look at what it looks like to actually play with this. Also, I forgot to mention there is a little side build of a grill that is now on fire. There's a burger that's on fire, and I almost feel like it would have been funnier to have the burger be like black, like it's completely burnt, which is why the fire has happened. But I get that they wanted to have a burger that you can play with and pretend to feed to Squirtle as well. So I'm going to take one smart brick first, shake it to wake it up here, and then we are going to place it inside of Squirtle and listen to what that sounds like. And again, it sometimes is a little annoying to remove the blocks here to place a smart brick inside. Like some other bricks will come off, but I much prefer that as opposed to having no sort of cover at all and having Squirtle have like an open chest. So let's place a smart brick inside and hear what that sounds like. Okay, I mean, that kind of sounds like him saying Squirtle. I don't know. And of course you can make him make other sounds like we demonstrated as well, so you can shake him around, you can have him hop. I want to make him talk more, which like sometimes you do, and that's one thing I noticed with the Pokemon, like there's a lot of hopping noises as you like make him walk. I wish that he would talk a little bit more when you have the smart brick in there. Like, I wish there was a way to guarantee that he talks, and I guess you can kind of shake him, and I think the thing is, like, you're supposed to shake him to make him laugh, which is what the instruction manual says, and you can kind of do that. You can hear him making some noises, but I kind of want him to be talking more. But, of course, you do have the attacks as well, so you have a charge attack, and it actually sounds like water gurgling, which is nice. Oh, that was very funny. Does it always make the doo-doo-doo-doo sound? Oh, I actually really like that. Wait, let's make him do that again. Well, that was like a sprout. That was like a water blast. How did he do the little like the? Was that because I charged him, but I didn't let him launch the attack? That was really funny. That was a very funny noise. I've never heard the smart brick make that sound before. I want to recreate that. I don't know. How did he make that sound? Oh, that's if you charge him up too much. Okay, that's really funny. Wow, okay. Am I actually liking the smart brick? This is crazy. I'm actually getting, like, maybe I'm just in a better mood today. I'm getting more enjoyment out of this, like, way more than I was getting out of the Star Wars ones. But I think here's the thing, right? My brain, like, I'm looking at cute creature, and I'm hearing him make silly noises, and that's, like, making my brain feel a lot happier than, like, minifigure of Luke Skywalker going, rah, 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 and just making no funny noises. I think that, like, that is why Smart Play Pokemon works so much better, because I associate these like funny noises with the cute object I'm holding. But now, of course, we can take one of the other smart bricks, which again, none of the smart bricks are included in the set, and place it in the car. And I think my excitement about the smart bricks is about to go way down. So let's see what happens when you place it in the car. Okay, you get a little bit of a beeping sound. I assume like there's a driving noise. Can you do anything else, like shake it? No? So if you move faster, it does sound like the engine is revving up here. Yeah. I mean, that's not that exciting. Yeah. We are back to Smart Play Star Wars. But now, I wonder if we put, like, the two smart bricks with each other, will it do something? No. Really? Oh, that's really disappointing. I feel like the point of the set would be to take Smart Brick Squirtle, put them on Smart Brick Car, and then they start to, like, interface with each other. Like, maybe there's, like, water blast noises, but no. I don't think they're interfacing with each other. That is really odd. Huh, okay. Well, that's a little disappointing. I feel like they could have had some level of interaction there to make them interact, but then again, there it is. Like, this is not the most exciting Smart Play set. I feel like Squirtle's cute. I think out of all the Pokemon, I love the sounds that Squirtle makes the most, but especially that sound he makes when he, like, doesn't charge up correctly and he just kind of goes, Ew. That's a very funny sound, so I do like that, but everything else, little mixed on. I feel like for $30, this set value is probably there. Like, it actually seems relatively fair for all the new molds, all the new pieces, the new prints, the smart tag integration, and even on paper, like the piece count is commensurate with $30, but this set just doesn't excite me the same way so many of the other ones are actually fun to play with, and I would take the previous set we looked at, the $20 Charmander versus Geodude Cavern Clash, any day over this $30 one, because that one is actually fun to play with by itself without the smart brick. But now, let's move on to the other sets. So after going from a set with only one Pokemon, we now have our next set, and for $35, we get 3 Pokemon, which is actually quite nice. This is set number 72158, Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxly, and these are our 3 starters in one set, which is actually really cool. With 313 pieces, it retails for $35, 35 euros, or 30 British pounds, and it also comes with a little bit of a spinner to select which Pokemon you're going to get. This really reminds me of some of the early Hogwarts house sorting sets, which allowed you to choose which house you're going to be sorted into, and other sets of the like, especially because there are no stickers in the set. This is a printed component, which I really appreciate because you can use this disc showcasing fire, grass, and water for really any sort of starting system. It doesn't need to be necessarily these particular 3 ones. You can use it for really anything, which I think is really cool. So I'm definitely a big fan of how they were able to pull this off. Of course, though, aside from the spinner, the focus is really on the Pokemon. There's another one of the Pokeballs included, which I think makes a lot of sense. I almost kind of wish it included 3 Pokeballs, but maybe the point is you have one Pokeball and you have to choose which one you get. So okay, that actually does make sense to me why it has 1. But we do have our 3 Pokemon here, and they all look pretty good. I'm going to start off with Quaxly, of course, because I am Duck Bricks after all, and I actually really like Quaxly. I've seen a lot of people say that they're not the biggest fans of this one, and I guess it is a little bit odd compared to some of the other Pokemon. The aesthetics do not feel quite as clean as some of the other ones, but I think it makes up for it by having this really cute aesthetic to it. You have the printed 1x2 curved element for the bill there. You have the printed eyes, also on a newer element, a 2x4 piece that actually curves all the way around, which is going to be really useful. And then even for the hat element here, you have all sorts of different components that make up the hat. There are great rounded components they actually introduced earlier this year, actually. Yeah, I believe it was earlier this year, to introduce those components into the hat pieces itself and have the rounded elements be flattened onto plates. So it all works really well. And then, of course, you have the movable feet here. There are the blue feet, which are the only parts of the build that I feel like are a little out of place. They're just using the studded 2x3 elements here with the rounded off corner to allow you to have the Technic pin attachment, and I feel like these are almost too studded. It doesn't really fit the very smooth aesthetic of the rest of the Pokemon, and even the hands, there are studs on the end of the hands, which I guess are good to allow them to hold things, but it does feel like overall there's almost too many studs on Quaxly compared to all of the other Pokemon. However, it's not the end of the world, it's just something I did want to point out. Of course, there is a slot for the Smart Brick as well, and while we're looking at him, we might as well integrate and hear what he sounds like with the Smart Brick integrated into the build. So I'm going to take one here, wake it up, and let's hear what that sounds like. Okay. I honestly was kind of hoping it would be a little bit more duck sounding. I don't really know what I would do, but actually, the Smart Brick launch in Las Vegas showcased a Lego duck tag, which they've never released in this set. It was just for the demo, and the Smart Brick actually kind of sounded like a duck, so I almost kind of wish that they integrated more of that sound into this Pokemon here. But it does still have a unique voice. You can hear him kind of making little noises here. And of course, you have your charge attacks and so on and so forth, which will showcase when we actually do the duels. So setting him down there, it's now time to take a look at Sprigatito. So this one is actually really cute. I actually think that this is probably one of the best looking ones out of this entire set, and even across the entire wave. I feel like they did a really good job replicating this in Lego form. You have the integration of the grass element that they actually initially introduced for the Lego Peanut Snoopy house, but I imagine that they made that piece for Pokemon and that set just came out a little earlier. You have the same ear element that they introduced for Jigglypuff for the smaller set, and you even have some other new interesting curved elements. I really love the integration of all of these expansions to Lego's curved system. You have a movable tail, which is quite nice. You can move that up and down, and altogether I feel like this is a really cute kind of four-legged creature, sort of setting the template for what the four-legged creatures will look like. And of course, you've got the Smart Tag on the inside, and now let's take a look at what it sounds like to put a Smart Brick on the inside, and actually buying all the sets gives you 3 Smart Bricks, so we can hear what all of them sound like right here. We're going to wake it up right here, and let's go ahead and hear what this one sounds like. A little higher pitched. This almost sounds like more of a female-oriented character here, so you have that higher pitch there, and you have other noises being made as well. Almost sounds like a leaf rustling sound, which I think is the entire intent there, so I think that actually works out quite well. And then, of course, these two can speak to each other as well, which is going to be very cute. I don't know, it just sounds so much more satisfying than a lot of the Star Wars Smart Play ones when they're talking to each other. I think it's just probably because these are cuter animals, but I actually kind of like them. And then finally we have Fuecoco here, and this one also looks really, really good, I feel. You have a printed slope on the back for the tail to allow that yellow to kind of continue down on the back. It's kind of broken up by a bit of red here, so that is a bit unfortunate, but you know, they kind of tried to get that across here. You have the little arms, you have the rounded legs, and then of course you do have the mouth printed on another one of those newer curved elements. This is a 1x4 curved element this time, and then the hair on the top, which I love the building techniques here used for the hair. I feel like attaching these by clips and allowing you to kind of swing these back and forth a little bit just adds so much character to the build. So altogether, really, really solid here. I'm going to remove the section for the smart brick, and we're going to go ahead and place our final smart brick in here, so let's hear what he sounds like. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now, all three of them are smart bricked up, and they can all speak to each other, like so. Which is really cool. Again, you do have the interactability here, but now, let's engage in a battle. Of course, this is supposed to be a battle, as the set title suggests, so let's go ahead and choose, like, fire versus grass type here, and see how that goes for them here. So we're going to put Quaxly to the side and start a battle. All right, boom, boom. A lot of this is mostly just swinging them at each other. You kind of have to get the momentum for the hit, but then you have your charge attacks as well. So let's try to charge up an attack. Oh, that's really funny. The hit sounds are really funny on this one. Okay, but now, what if we took a fire and water creature here? So let's start a battle. All right. All right, let's do a charge attack. I'm just doing, those are just regular attacks. The charge attack is a little annoying. Like, you kind of have to shake it in a certain way to do it. Oh, these two just beat up Fuecoco. That's kind of sad. But, you know, you get a few different options here. Sometimes the charge attacks are a little bit harder to accomplish than others. All of them theoretically should have charge attacks, like... Yeah, like this one you can hear the water. And that's sort of the same sound as Squirtle. And let's see if he has the same deflation sound effect. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so all the water ones have that same sound effect. Let's hear a fire one here. So that's kind of a fire blast. And let's hear what it sounds like when that kind of charges up too much. Oh, he's laughing. There you go. And then, of course, you can do a charge attack for the grass type as well. Okay, I think that's the least exciting sound. I think they actually did a really good job on the water sound effect for the water type Pokemon actually does sound like bubbling water, which is actually really impressive. And then the other ones just sound all right. So then going ahead and putting these back in their default forms, we will put the Smart Bricks back to charge because then again, the Smart Bricks batteries tend to die very, very quickly. And that is another major downside of Smart Play in general, which we're going to get to when we get to the overview. But for now, let's move on from this set and take a look at the next one. Our next set here is actually on the slightly pricier side. This is 72161 Drone Search for the Mythical Mew. It retails for $50, 50 euros, or 45 British pounds, and comes with 429 pieces. We were just coming off of a set with 3 Pokemon, and now we are down to 1. But this one actually makes a little bit more sense to me. and the play features are actually kind of fun by themselves. So the entire thesis of this set is that basically you have this drone, which I don't believe appears in any official Pokemon media. I'm sure some diehard Pokemon fans might be able to correct me on that, but it doesn't really look like anything that I recognize, is searching for Mew, as one does, because it is this kind of mystical and mythical being, and you are approaching these Pokemon ruins, and the way it works is that you're supposed to drop these plants on the target here to reveal Mew. Now, all of that aside, this is just something you can play with by itself. Mew is hiding behind the piece of rockwork here. Not very well, because he's like floating behind it, but you know, imagine that you're kind of surveying the environment. There's a whole temple over Mew. He's hiding behind the ruins. And then you have your drone come in, and the way it works is that you can kind of drop these bombs. So you have these like fruit pieces in there, and the entire play function is you can hold it like a handle, you can put your thumb on the back, and you can drop bombs to be targeting this target area right here. Now, I completely missed, but the way it's supposed to work is that you have these bombs here, and you have your radar up, and then maybe we're going to try this one more time. Boom, there we go. So it takes ever so slightly, just a really small tap in order to allow the wall to collapse and for Mew to be revealed. That is basically it when it comes to the play function. There's a couple of other things that you can do with the ruins. For instance, there is an exploding feature, as there usually is, so pressing down here causes this pillar to topple over, revealing a pink gem on the inside. And then on the other side here, you do have a platform that is actually on a hinged component here, and that is what you can actually use to store the extra ammunition that the set comes with, because it comes with 3 of the little plant bomb pieces, so you can store one of them inside the ruins and then have their other 2 stored inside the jet itself. But of course, the main focus is on Mew, and despite this being a $50 set, Mew is actually a smaller Pokemon, although I do understand why they chose to feature a larger set around Mew, given his popularity. Obviously, the very first Pokemon movie featured Mew and Mewtwo, which we're going to be taking a look at in a second, and Mew is just a very iconic Pokemon that has really been around from one of the early days of Pokemon storytelling. So Mew here is built up relatively similarly to the other bipedal creatures that we see throughout the sets, but with one major difference, and that is the gigantic tail. You can pose the tail back and forth, you can sway it where it's curved around the back, you can kind of have it curved in all sorts of different directions, and I'm going to be honest, I am not the biggest fan of the tail, and most of that is because the tail is just completely unable to keep a pose. If you want to have the tail like swung out to the side like so, it's just not going to stay up in any pose that you want. And I feel like despite the range of posability and the different things that you can do with the tail, there's actually a lot that you can do with the tail itself. There honestly really aren't that many poses it can actually withhold, because it will just always flop over, no matter what you do. So that is definitely a major downside to the way that Mew is built to me. I don't really know how else they could have done it. I mean, it is using friction pins, and probably to have any more friction in it would have caused a much more complicated building system. But it is a bit unfortunate now that the tail just really flops around. Although, I can also imagine that maybe for kids to play with, it is kind of fun to like swoosh the tail back and forth, and maybe that was the entire intent of allowing it to at least sort of flop around. Now, the integration of the Smart Brick is super simple, and one thing that's pretty cool is that the entire Smart Brick integration removes the clear stand. So the clear stand is just for you to be able to display Mew hovering above the ground. But of course, if you're using the Smart Brick to play with Mew, you're not going to need to have him hovering because you can hold him in your hands. So the entire stand comes off, and let's go ahead and take one of the Smart Bricks and hear what it sounds like when you put it inside. That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, that is pretty cool. It does have a very cool mystical hovering sound, which you can see just by literally lifting up Mew and moving him around. You have this constant mystical hovering sound, which I think is one of the coolest features of being able to use the Smart Brick with Mew, and you can kind of hear it when I stop talking right now. And that, of course, is a psychic attack that you can use when you're hovering him up and charging him. And then, of course, you can blast fast attacks as well. So, like so. And then of course he does make the very funny whistling sound if you charge him up too much and don't get to launch the attack. So altogether, I think it's actually pretty cool how you have that constant noise that he's hovering around, but honestly, the Smart Brick integration into Mew is really awkward. I feel like it just juts right out of the chest. It doesn't look great on really any of the Pokemon, but it's very obvious for Mew, who really is supposed to have this small and slender body, and you can clearly see that they basically did all they could to integrate the Smart Brick as deep inside the creature as they could, but it honestly is probably one of the worst. Now, one of the cool things, though, is that the Smart Brick actually interacts with the Smart Tile, which is included on the back side of the wall, and it knows whether or not the wall is kind of covering up Mew or he has been exposed. Unlike the Squirtle car, which did not interface with the multiple Smart Bricks on it, this one actually does. So let's actually go ahead and place him down here. Let's have him hide behind the drone and see what it sounds like when he is revealed. So right now, he's hiding. And in theory, the Smart Brick should be recognizing that Smart Tag, which is near him. Yep, there you go. You can hear some music. And then, when you actually drop the bombs and reveal him, there we go, he kind of makes a disappointed sound that he has been revealed, and that is it. It's nothing crazy, all it does is basically play music until you find him, but I think that is just a nice little extra addition of play into a set like this that actually allows you to have the Smart Brick and Smart Tags interact with each other. Now there is one more Smart Tag incorporated here, and this is where it gets the most like the LEGO Star Wars sets. As compared to the Smart Play Star Wars sets, which had X-Wings and Millennium Falcons that could actually shoot when you showed a different color in front of the Smart Brick, there actually is a smart integration into the drone here. So you can take the Smart Brick and place it on the drone, and let's hear what that sounds like. And of course, you can make it fly around, which sounds really similar to the noises it makes for these Star Wars sets. But then, there's another sound effect you can incorporate when you actually have it with the radar dish up. You'll notice these blue pieces on the side of the radar dish, and when you lift it up, the Smart Brick is always scanning for blue, and when it detects blue, it'll make a different sound. So it is a radar tracking sound, and honestly, I think one of the really cool things that you would be able to do is it actually start beeping when Mew approaches. So let's see if that actually does anything here. I doubt it, but it's worth a shot because we can be surprised with some of the integrations. I feel like that would be a very obvious one. But no, nothing really when you detect Mew, even if you take another Smart Brick. Let's go ahead and try that out. We're going to wake this up. I'm going to place it in Mew, and let's see if the two Smart Bricks will interact with each other when you actually uncover what you're looking for. But no, that actually did not change the amount of beeping. It only changed because of the angle I was holding the brick. So when you hold the brick at a slightly different angle like this, it starts to beep very rapidly. And then when you hold the drone like this, it beeps very slowly. So even if Mew has a Smart Brick inside of him, the radar dish doesn't really do much in terms of being able to accurately detect him, which I think is a bit of a miss. You can see Mew is right here. He's literally on top of the drone, but they are not interacting. The Smart Brick is not flashing like crazy. Nothing is really happening to detect that Mew is anywhere near the drone. As you can see, it's flashing like normal. So honestly, a little disappointing there, and these are just small wins that I feel the Smart Brick could have implemented to just make play a lot more integrated and fun, even within the same set. Obviously, you do need to get multiple copies of these Smart Bricks in order to play that way, but I still feel like that would have been a really cool way to have the set actually interact with the other Smart Bricks that you can integrate into it, rather than just having a very simple play feature like that. Now, I think it is worth spending a little bit of time on the drone. It is, of course, shaped like a Pokeball for some reason, but I actually kind of like that. I feel like it is a bit distinct compared to a lot of the other builds in the line, and if you're going to have to create some sort of random vehicle, I guess like a Pokeball-shaped drone makes the most sense. It is a lot of fun to play with. It's very simple to swoosh around with the handle in the back, comprising of these large Technic elements. And then, of course, you do have the propellers, which can be rotated any which way. It kind of reminds me of a smaller version of the Ultra Agents Hurricane Heist, which had these like massive propellers on the back that you kind of tilt and angle around. It's obviously a lot smaller than that, but I actually do kind of like what you can do with it. You can pose these around, and you can choose what angle you actually want your drone to be positioning the propellers here, which is pretty cool. So it's overall a lot of fun. I think that it is maybe not the best set when it comes to the price for part ratio, but I will say that the play feature of actually being able to drop the fruits down and review Mew with a very, very light like tap is actually quite well engineered. There was a lot of weights and balances being done there to just make it go down on a very, very slight tap. I will say though, value-wise, for $50, I think that we are getting into the territory of this not really feeling like it's worth the money. If you remove the Smart Brick integration, and I couldn't say this for most of these Star Wars sets, but at least for the other Pokemon sets, I feel like a lot of them actually provided relatively decent value. But pretending that these Smart Bricks have nothing to do with the set, I'm not really convinced that this is good value at $50. This feels like a $20, maybe a $25 build tops, and I guess Mew is maybe worth like $10 on its own, so that brings us to, I guess, $35. If we're really being generous, the build itself is maybe like also another 10. So 45, like we're close to being at value here, but just when you look at the amount of stuff you get, it doesn't really feel like a $50 set to me. It's not that far off. I think 40 or 45 would have made me feel a lot happier with buying this one, but it just feels like you're getting a lot of extra stuff that doesn't really add on that much to play. Like, again, the drone is pretty big and beefy for what it is. I don't know if it needed to be this large. I think you could have scaled it down, had the same drop feature, and thrown in another Pokemon. I mean, that is what the sets are all about, collecting the Pokemon. And I think the best sets, the best Smart Play Pokemon sets, the ones that really excel, are the ones that actually are able to integrate more Pokemon and less random side builds. So Mew is cute. I like the build enough, but I feel like this is not one of these stronger sets. But now let's move on to something maybe a bit more interesting. Moving into the $60 range, we have set 72162 Eevee and Lapras' Treasure Hunt. This comes with 623 pieces and retails for $60, 60 euros, or 55 British pounds, and this is the largest Pokemon that we've seen so far. As such, I feel like this is one of the more interesting Pokemon creature-based sets, whereas most of the Pokemon, and pretty much all of them that we've seen up to this point in the Mega Review, have been these smaller scale creatures. This is a true anomaly. It is a very large creature, and I love that they're all relatively in scale with each other. It would have been really easy for LEGO to make this at a slightly different scale compared to the rest, but they actually tried to keep them relatively consistent, which is something I really appreciate. Now, I'm not really sure what the exact premise of the set is really supposed to be. I guess you're looking for hidden treasure, and there are some interesting play features. There is a map to the treasure, and I think that this is really emblematic of the funky scale we're working with here, because the map, which normally would be just like a minifigure accessory, is actually a massive 4x4 tile with extra pieces added onto the sides, because of course we are not working in minifig scale, we're working in large character scale, and that's kind of the scale that we're at here. Even still though, we still have a regular-sized minifigure steering wheel for a pirate ship wheel. We have what looks to be like at least sort of like a minifigure scale pirate ship wreckage, same with the mast, even smaller than it. So I guess you could imagine that these are just bits and pieces of what could have been a gigantic ship, but it does make the scale feel a little bit wonky here, because when I see this, my brain goes minifigure scale. That's a minifigure pirate ship, that's a flag, but it's not really what this is supposed to be. Now, there is Eevee, of course, included as well, and it is interesting to have Eevee, one of the more popular starters, relegated to a $60 set, but I think it kind of makes sense. You know, they were quite generous with some of the other ones, like Bulbasaur and Charmander coming in small sets, so some of the other popular Pokemon have to be in some of the larger ones. One of the cool references here is that there is a sticker with Magikarps kind of carved into the wooden raft, and we have not seen a Magikarp yet from LEGO Pokemon. I really want to see that. I think maybe that might be like my number 2 most wanted Smart Play Pokemon. Number 1 has to be Psyduck. I gotta stay on brand, but once they actually do Psyduck, I think Magikarp and Gyarados, like, put both of them in a set. I think that'd be really funny, like make it the evolution. So I'd love to see that at some point. I'm sure that LEGO is cooking up something cool with Pokemon, and many more sets are on their way. But as of right now, we've got Eevee and Lapras here. So I'm going to start off by taking a look actually at Lapras, because I think that's probably the most interesting part of the build. Being a large-scale Pokemon, you can articulate the kind of flippers here on Nixel joints or mini ball joints, so that is quite nice to see. Just kind of move them back and forth and up and down, and you can rotate them as well. You can also articulate the tail also on a mini ball joint, which is nice. I think that is quite expressive and adds just a little bit of personality to the creature. I actually really like the building techniques here used for the rocky back shell of the creature here. You've actually got all the light grays being used, some pretty good building techniques with studs on the side being used to have this curvature going around the back. You have a little bit of different color variation here when it comes to the darker azure as opposed to the light azure going along the side of the creature, and then the combination of your BB-8 heads or BB-9E heads alongside the larger scale Astromech heads to kind of make up the spikes on the back of the creature, which look really good. Now, by itself, this just looks like a fun toy to play with. Again, there is like no obvious Smart Play plug whatsoever. You've got the head, and I honestly feel like maybe the only thing is I wish the head was articulatable. It would have been nice to be able to rotate the head or make it be able to look side to side. It's not the end of the world, and I get that they probably didn't want to do that, and they wanted to restrict the articulation for kids to be able to play with this easily, especially in duels and Smart Play battles, but that's just something I did want to point out. But you'll notice that the entire Smart Play slot here is in just this little section in the body here. So let's go ahead and grab a Smart Brick and hear what it sounds like when you actually place a Smart Brick inside of the creature. So I'm going to take this right here and place it inside. All right, you'll start to notice that a lot of these kind of sound the same, but, you know, varying degrees of pitches. The interesting thing, though, is that much like Mew when we saw earlier, Mew was making that kind of hovering noise and mystical flying sound, this one consistently always makes a swimming noise because you're supposed to be playing with it swimming in the water. So let's kind of listen closely to that now, and you can hear what that sounds like. There's your charge attack, but again, you do have this constant bubbling noise that really sets a creature like this apart compared to some of the other Pokemon, and I think that's actually really cool. Again, the Smart Brick actually seems to do a relatively decent job at being able to actually integrate like liquid sounds for whatever reason. Like, whenever you have water integrated into the Smart Brick, it actually sounds kind of like water somehow, even though it's very synthesized and electronic. So I actually think it's pretty cool to be able to play with this as if it's always swimming along. Of course, if you just let him down, he'll eventually stop making the sound, but I think it's really cool that as you move him around, he'll make the noise. Moving on from that, though, we should take a look at Eevee and see how they can interact with each other when it comes to Smart Play. Now, Eevee is built very similarly to a lot of the other four-legged creatures, but all of them have slightly different builds. You've got the fur on the side here, you have the ears which can rotate, and I do love how you can pose the ears. I think that's the best part of it. Being able to have the ears kind of one up and one down, I think is very nice, and you can even pose the tail back and forth. Altogether, the building techniques on Eevee are really solid. I actually really like the usage of studs and the side techniques and all the parts they went for in order to craft Eevee like this, so I'm definitely a fan of that. Now, the way that the Smart Play integration works is you can take out the chest area here and go ahead and remove this entire piece that attaches on for the front fur, and now let's take another Smart Brick and see how they interact and what it sounds like when you place it inside Eevee. There you go, much more high-pitched, and now let's let them talk. I think the laughing part is the best one. I think that listening to them laugh and like tell each other jokes is really cute. And now, once again, we're gonna make them battle, and they are no longer friends. They're gonna gear up for battle. So let's get ready for that. If we can make that happen. Come on, shake to start battle. There we go. All right, we're gonna do a charge attack. Now Eevee's gonna do a charge attack. Well, if we can make him do a charge attack, this is just launching regular attacks. That is my frustration with the Pokemon. Like, if you get a charge attack to work, that's cool, but I feel like it's kind of hard and not immediately obvious like what you're supposed to do to trigger it. So I'm gonna try it one more time, holding Eevee here. Nope, those are just a ton of regular attacks. Eevee won, there you go. And there you go. Well, that was a smart play battle. Again, nothing super crazy going on until we get to some of the other sets, which actually, as I keep mentioning, integrate heals and all sorts of stuff like that, which I'm actually quite excited to get to. But as of right now, I think it's pretty cute. It's very, very simple how you can make them interact. But again, it works well for what you're trying to accomplish with LEGO Smart Play. And I do actually feel like they did a relatively decent job at capturing the likenesses of both Pokemon. Eevee in particular feels really iconic and very well done when it comes to the character and how it's integrated, and Lapras just looks like a really good build on its own, completely agnostic of the Smart Break or having to integrate the Smart Break into the set. So altogether, I'm pretty happy with the builds. But that is only one part of the set, because of course there is a whole other part of the set, and that is the search for the treasures. So I guess these Pokemon have teamed up to search for treasure. Eevee is on the raft, and they have found themselves at this mysterious island, which actually is a pretty cool play feature because Eevee can get off the raft and basically knock down the mast here. Boom. And in the process of knocking down the mast, you actually will reveal the treasure chest. And yes, there is a smart brick integration of the treasure chest. They were pretty inconsistent when it came to the play features, like some other sets just don't have smart tags and you use your imagination. But this one, in addition to finding actual LEGO treasure inside the treasure chest, actually has a smart tag to find it. So let's actually see what happens when we place the smart brick just by itself near the treasure coin icon. Starts to play music. Very nice. And it kind of makes a coin clinking sound. But now let's see what happens when one of the Pokemon actually finds the treasure. Okay, kind of the same thing, but with more of a clinking sound, as if you are obtaining coins and riches from the treasure. I'm not really sure what that actually gives you other than making Eevee glow green, and it's not quite like the, say, LEGO Super Mario app integration where you would actually be able to collect power-ups and coins and all that, and that would add to your total. This doesn't really have any sort of app integration, which I appreciate. I'm glad I don't need to use an app to play with this, and that was something that was really important for LEGO to do with Smart Play, was that they had received negative feedback on video and hidden side because people wanted their kids to not be on screens and instead play socially with their friends instead of using an app. And so they came up with the Smart Brick to solve that problem, because obviously electronics weren't the problem. No, it was the fact that there was an app tied to them. But I'm being a little sarcastic there, but actually, again, I do actually appreciate how I don't need to be holding my phone right now and going through an app. I can just play with these by themselves, and they're actually kind of fun to play with. Even just little things like that will spark your imagination as a kid. So I'm definitely a lot more positive on this round of Smart Play, and for $60, I feel like Lapras is quite substantial. Eevee is a good like $10 to $15 figure on its own, so if you say like maybe this is like 40, this is 15, we're already at 55, and you throw everything else in for $60, I actually feel like we have pretty good value here. So I can't believe I'm saying it for a Smart Play set, but the price is not actually that bad. Like maybe they just released the wave of Star Wars sets first, so I would be like much kinder towards these and everybody would be a lot happier with these, but it is what it is. You've got a barrel with some fruit inside it as well, some new instances of that grass element that I mentioned for some of these smaller sets being integrated to really set the scale here, showcase that grass tufts are that big. But altogether, I'm actually a fan of this one. I like both Pokemon. I think they're depicted quite well, and the play feature is very simple, but actually pretty well done to lift up the rock by just moving down the treasure mast here, utilizing the same mini gears that were used in Bionicle Generation 2 for the friction gearboxes. But now it's time to take a look at Mewtwo. Alright, this right here is definitely one of the most visually and subject-wise interesting out of all the Pokemon sets, and this is 72163 Mewtwo's Lab Break. It comes with 605 pieces and retails for $70, 70 euros, or 60 British pounds. And upon first glance, I will say that $70 feels a little high for this. I think it looks visually very cool, but a lot of those pieces are just large, hollow, empty elements that don't really add a ton. Really, the main focus is on Mewtwo himself, which really doesn't feel like it is more than a maybe $45 to $50 value at most. 50 is honestly pushing it for a build of this size. So by itself, I'm a little skeptical of the value, but it does make up for it in terms of having some really cool play features and also having a really cool aesthetic design. I think out of all the Smart Play Pokemon sets, this one looks the most impressive on display. And I like the fact that you can just use this as a display if you're a fan of Mewtwo, if you're a fan of that first Pokemon movie, and you don't even need to care about or know what the Smart Brick even is in order to enjoy this, much like some of the best Smart Play Pokemon sets. So the main play feature is that you can kind of twist this knob on the front, and twisting it too violently will cause both halves to break open, and it's very satisfying the way it breaks open, but it's actually engineered really well, so you don't cause any damage to the bricks. They just kind of blast open, these very large pieces come apart, and Mewtwo is free to escape from his containment chamber, which I think is super cool. It's a very simple feature as well. It literally is just a click hinge connected to a clip, so there's slightly less connectivity there, and then you essentially have a knob that pushes the two pieces apart there, and they fall on Technic rubber grommets. They don't have any scuffing done on the bricks or repeated clashes. It just feels so satisfying when they spring open. It feels like a mechanical release, and it is such a simple play feature. It's not over-engineered, allowing you to break Mewtwo free. Now, the actual stand is built into there, so you kind of lift Mewtwo up, he can hover out, and you can pretend that he is kind of floating around, ready to attack those who placed him into prison. Now, of course, the focus is on Mewtwo himself. In addition to the containment chamber, you have a little hologram showcasing the Mewtwo specs, and unfortunately, unlike many of the other pieces in this lineup, this is a sticker, and it's a transparent back sticker, and I don't love that. I feel like they're pretty inconsistent when it came to stickers versus printed designs for Smart Play Pokemon, and if anything should have been a print, I feel like it should have been this, but if you're careful with it, you can apply it nicely. And then you also have a Master Ball that's exclusive to the set, built the same way that all the other Pokeballs are. So Mewtwo does have the ability to stand by himself, like so. You can kind of have him be standing on his two legs. It's a very, very strange building technique used to allow the feet to kind of be positioned tiptoeing on the ground. There are transparent clear supports on the back, so he can actually balance on the back of those. So he can't stand by himself, but otherwise you do have a pretty decent range of articulation. You can cause the legs to rotate back and forth on the click hinges here. The arms, I think, are the most questionable out of it. Like, the idea is that you can cross his arms, but I feel like it just ended up looking really goofy. Like, it looks like it's way too spindly, way too robotic. It looks like the arms kind of move at right angles only, and it just feels very awkward. I don't know. I'm not the fan of these arms at all. I feel like they could have had any other way to build the arms that wouldn't have looked like this. But other than that, I don't think it's that bad. It's just something that I feel does detract a little bit from the overall aesthetic of the character because the arms just really throw me off. One of the really cool things, though, is that you actually do have head articulation, but you're pretty limited, and that's because they do have the cord connecting Mewtwo's back of his head to the neck, and that does restrict the articulation a bit, but it's really cool to see that move alongside the head. The only thing is that I think for kids, this might be a little frustrating because in play, it's really easy to like move the head too much and detach the back cord and then allow it to move freely, which I don't think is what they intended, or to cause the Technic axle to break out of the bindings there. But when you actually are able to make it move alongside the head, it's relatively limited in head articulation. You can almost just kind of make him ever so slightly look back and forth. I think it actually works very well for the character of Mewtwo, which is kind of this more omnipresent being that is more powerful than a lot of the other Pokemon. Now, the tail on the back here is connected via a ratchet click system, so you can kind of swing that back and forth super easy. And then, of course, you do have the back part of the tail, which also can swing back and forth, but you're really supposed to kind of arc it up in this curvature here. I think it's a little awkward just how 90-degree bent and fixed that part of the tail is. I know that's kind of what the tail looks like in the cartoon, and obviously like the way that it works is it's always kind of draped around him, but if you look at the curvature of the tail, it feels really awkward. Like I think that this just isn't really selling me on what the tail is supposed to look like, where it's supposed to feel a lot more organic. If they came up with a macaroni piece that was maybe instead of a 90-degree angle, like a slightly different angle where you could actually splay this out just a little more, I think that would have been a bit better, but as it stands right now, I think the curvature in the tail is really awkward because of how sharp that bend is. But of course, the big thing here is how does this actually work with the Smart Brick? So you take off the bottom center of, oh, you put the Smart Brick there? Man, well, if you need to get Mewtwo bricked up here, you can actually integrate the Smart Brick into this area of Mewtwo. Man, first Pikachu, then Charizard, and now this. Okay, but let's place the Smart Brick inside and hear what noise he makes. There you go. So he has a bit of a hovering sound, which is nice. It's a lot deeper than Mew's, and I feel like it is this kind of ominous hovering sound, as you can hear right now. I'm going to stop talking so you can hear it. I think that really sells me on Mew. On Mewtwo, moving and hovering, like flying through the air. However, I do think the noises that he makes, like the vocal sounds, are almost a little off. Like, it's almost comically low-pitched. Like, I'm going to stop talking here so you can hear one of them. I don't know. Did you hear that? He just going, "Eat." I don't know. I think that's not really what I pictured Mewtwo to sound like with the Smart Brick. Again, this is Smart Brick after all, so I think that some interpretations of characters are better than others, but that's a little bit rough. However, you do have the option to do attack, so let's hear what that sounds like. That's actually pretty cool. It really does sound like a Psychic Blast mental attack there, so I think that actually is a really cool sound. Of course, you can push him forwards to have him make other attack sounds, like so. And I actually really want to know, what does Mewtwo sound like when he's asleep and snoring? So let's put him to bed. Was that the sound? No way. Please start snoring. Well, that wasn't a snore, that was just a noise. Oh. Oh, this is a snore. Okay. Okay, I think this makes sense, like him breathing out and exhaling, you have the emphasis of the breath. I thought it was really funny when I heard him go like, and I thought he'd keep doing that as he's snoring, but I think this makes a lot more sense. This is a little bit more menacing that way, like he's an animal in hibernation ready to attack. And then, let's wake him up. Wah! Yeah, again, not super sold in the vocals there, but the hovering noise actually does make up for it. It does feel pretty menacing. And again, that psychic attack is really cool. Yeah, cool sound effect there. So altogether, this is one of the sets that I feel like is the least Smart Play out of all the Smart Play Pokemon. It is $70, and yet it doesn't have a Smart Brick, and it doesn't even have any other Smart Tags. Like, despite how big and imposing the build is to trap Mewtwo and keep him contained, there is no Smart Tag for you to be able to go, okay, now I know that he is 100% contained inside this field. You really just have to lift him up and start playing with him, and you just actuate the play feature like this. There's actually nothing the Smart Brick can do with this feature breaking open that it can even recognize. And I actually kind of appreciate that. Instead of having to force a build in some feature that wouldn't make the most sense, I actually think they did this in the best way possible, where they treated this like both a display set, but also a cool play set to cause him to break out, and then you can choose to upgrade him with the Smart Brick. But honestly, unless you buy like the other Pokemon sets, there's not much you can do with him, and I feel like this just works the best as an actual display piece rather than something to actually put the Smart Brick in and play with out of all of these Smart Play Pokemon sets. But now, let's keep on moving forwards. Alright, we're several minutes into the video now, and only just now are we getting to Pikachu, which I guess makes sense. Pikachu is the most marketable and popular of the Pokemon, so it makes sense that LEGO would not throw Pikachu in a $20, $30, $40, or even $50 set. Instead, Pikachu is relegated to a $70 set, and this is one of only 2 Smart Play all-in-one sets. What all-in-one means is that you can play with this with a Smart Brick out of the box. You don't need to buy another set with a Smart Brick in order to start playing with it. The Smart Brick is included in this set. And unfortunately, that means that this set is really, really expensive. 72164 is Training House with Pikachu. It comes with 400 pieces, but it retails for $70 US, 70 euros, or 60 British pounds. And yeah, on paper, that is not great, but it also is in line with the rest of the pricing when it comes to actually throwing a Smart Brick in a set, where LEGO seems to be valuing the Smart Brick at around $30 to $40. So if you were to imagine the set without the Smart Brick, take away generously $25 to $30 from it, seeing this at a value of $40 actually starts to be a little more reasonable. But again, that's not the world we're in. You can't have the option to purchase this without the Smart Brick. You have to buy it with the Smart Brick, and as such, this product is $70, which is a lot of money. That is a lot of money to spend on this. The good thing though is that because this does have the Smart Brick inside of it, there actually are the highest amount of Smart Tags out of all the sets we've seen so far integrated into the set. And dare I say, the integrations are actually a little bit more interesting than the normal integrations for the other LEGO Smart Play Pokemon sets, or even the Smart Play Star Wars sets. And let's take a look at that right now. But first of all, I want to showcase how you can play with this if you don't use the Smart Brick, set it aside, and just have the set by itself. So obviously the star of the show is Pikachu, and Pikachu is pretty cute. I first saw the leaked image of Smart Play Pikachu, I want to say this was either at the beginning of the year, it might have even been last year actually. This leaked a long time ago. An image of Smart Play X-Wing and Pikachu leaked, and I was not impressed. I was very, very concerned with the way it looked. I was not a fan of how they pulled it off, but it's honestly kind of grown on me, and I feel like I saw that leak out of context without any context whatsoever in terms of what the other Pokemon look like. But looking at all the other Pokemon and seeing the visual style they're going with, they're not going for one-to-one renditions of Pokemon in LEGO brick form. They're going for their own style, and for its style, it's actually pretty cute. You can pose the ears, so you can kind of have one ear off to the side and one ear sticking up further straight, which is something you often see with Pikachu. He does have this kind of determined expression on his face, which makes a lot of sense. You do have the arms, which can move up and down. On the back there, you can see the iconic brown stripes, and the tail is probably the most satisfying and fun thing out of this because it just flips back and forth, you know? You've got the tail on a completely frictionless Technic pin, thankfully in yellow, so it doesn't even disrupt the play feature, and it's just so satisfying. Like, there is no Smart Brick in this Pikachu yet, and I'm still just shaking him around as if there was, because seeing that tail flop around is a ton of fun. And of course, you can use that for your charge attacks too, when you actually have the Smart Brick integrated. You have a Pokeball, which makes sense to have your standard Pokeball. There is a sandwich, which is really awkward looking because it is a regular sandwich on one side, but it has like a very big smart tag on the other side, and I get that makes sense because it actually is something pretty cool in-game, but as of right now, it's just a very awkward, gigantic-looking sandwich. And then you get to the main house, and I do know that in the games there are some houses that are shaped like Pokemon heads. There are houses that kind of look like this, so it's not outside the realm of reasonability. But honestly, I think that build-wise, this is probably one of my least favorite Smart Play sets. I feel like it is just so flat and two-dimensional. You just have this very, very, like, not interesting, gigantic Pikachu face that you're working with here, and there are a couple of things that you can do with it, and there's an interior, so you can see on the inside there you have a kitchen with a fork, a spoon, and a pan, which I think are a little bit too small for Pikachu. Like, I don't know, like, I guess unless Pikachu's doing the cooking, I don't know what he's doing with that. You have a clock with the Pokeball logo in it, but all just a sticker. This is all, nothing is like actually built here. A grass element and a cup, and then you can twist a knob on the side to allow Pikachu's bed to go down. So this is his house after all, so you can have Pikachu sleep in his bed, but not like very well, because unless Pikachu is sleeping face down, you cannot actually place him in his bed with his head on the pillow without his tail getting in the way. So I don't know, I feel like that was a bit of like a missed opportunity there. I don't really know why they have this bed integrated in if Pikachu just has to, like, it looks like he's died here. Like, he's just completely face down on the bed. I mean, I've done that sometimes when I sleep, but the fact that there's no way unless you rip his tail off for him to actually get a night's sleep in his bed is a little bit odd to me. But, you know, it is there, and I do actually like the Snorlax little pillow sticker there. I think that's actually quite cute to integrate in and adds on to that world of Pokemon. So it's a very basic feature. You've got your Pokeball color scheme themed bed, and you can rotate that up. The ears on the Pikachu house can be moved and angled as well, so you can choose to position them just like his actual ears, or just have them up straight and rotate them around, but it's super simple. There's a little tree on the side, also very simple, doesn't really do anything. There's no play feature there. And on the inside, there is a very, very simple area for a glow-in-the-dark little, like, flashlight here, I guess. This is supposed to be a flashlight, so that's attached there with one glow-in-the-dark piece. There's a brush as well to cone Pikachu, but the most interesting things that come to play here are actually the things on the side, because these all have smart tags. First of all, there is a training dummy, and I actually really like the way that the training dummy is built in. It is mounted such that it can freely rotate, and it also will always bounce back up because it's mounted on rubber Technic components, and I actually think that's pretty clever. Like, being able to have this rotating mounted training dummy which actually feels like something you can hit and it'll automatically bounce back up is actually really cool. And this is something that they introduced in, like, there was a make and take event at LEGO stores. You could add on to this and build your own, and I think there's a polybag that does something similar as well. So it's a really cool design feature that they use across the Smart Play Pokemon line. But the very interesting thing happens when you actually have Pikachu train with it, because training with it makes his attacks a lot more powerful, which is really, really interesting. And this is the kind of thing I was looking for from Smart Play Star Wars, things that actually change the way that you play with your vehicles. The thing that infuriated me about Smart Play LEGO Star Wars is that you had a refueling component, and you had all sorts of shooting components and everything, but all the vehicles had the same health. They did not even need to be facing each other to land a hit. You could be on the other side of the room, you could shoot a blast and it would still hit on the other vehicle, and there was no way to repair your vehicle. I mean, there was literally a wrench component you could use to repair it and a hammer component, but it didn't fix your ship mid-battle. Like, you literally, that did not affect the game whatsoever, and it was insane that they integrated that in, but didn't actually have it affect the game. But here, you actually have things that can materially, at least during one play session, increase your hit attack, increase the amount of damage you can do, an item that can allow you to heal, which we're about to demonstrate, and much more. So, on the other side of the Pikachu house, you can see a little bit of foliage where he's hiding behind, and there is a smart tag on this as well. Pressing down violently on the front there will allow the leaves to pop open and reveal Pikachu, who is meant to be standing right behind there, hidden behind the grass. It's a very simple feature, but the smart break will actually detect when the tag goes away, and that will actually allow it to make a noise that it's been revealed. Obviously, though, you can also just use your imagination. I mean, this is a play feature they've been integrated in LEGO sets in forever. My earliest experience with a play feature like this was in Ninjago in 2011, where you could have a ninja burst through the bamboo shoots. You know, that was one of the very first Ninjago sets. So it's a tried and true play feature, but it works quite well. But now for the moment of magic, let's hear what it sounds like when you actually take your smart brick and integrate it. Did this one die? Okay, no, it's still alive. And put it into Pikachu's body, which is really, I mean, if any of them are supposed to sound good, it should be this one. Okay, that was actually maybe the best initialization sound yet. He actually said Pikachu, like, kind of. That's the closest the Smart Brick has ever gotten to making a sound that sounds like something recognizable, which is crazy, but I liked it. You went like, Pikachu! You know, you can kind of have your brain be tricked into hearing it, so I think that actually works out quite well. But now let's actually hear what he sounds like when he's hopping around and making his attack noises. Pretty cool, and one thing you'll notice is that he actually will glow yellow when you do your charge attack, and it really does sound like lightning as well, which I think works really well. So let's hear that one more time. Very cool. So I think that's pretty nice that you can do that, and Pikachu makes a lot of noises as he goes around, and you can have him walk around and interact. But now, let's actually hear what it sounds like for Pikachu to train. So I'm going to take the training pod here and have the smart tag actually get scanned by the brick and allow him to train to increase his attacks. So every time it makes that little digital sound, it actually is leveling up his ability to attack. So if you just spam this, right? Like if you just go like this over and over again, like if you just really, really go back and forth over and over again with the training dummy, you can actually make Pikachu's attacks be like nearly unstoppable. I think at this point he could probably solo Mewtwo, and the training music continues. So I think that's a really cool feature. Like, that's something you can do to make your characters more powerful. So there he is. We've moved away from the thing now, and you can hear the level in which that he has actually leveled up. I've also completely just blasted away the fruit that was supposed to be on top of that, and that may be gone forever. I do not see it. But, you know, that is something that is supposed to be knocked off, so it is what it is. But now let's see what he sounds like when he's hiding behind the grass. He's making little noises, saying you can't find me. And then, boom. It plays a little sound, he flashes all the different colors. It's very cute. Like, I think that this is super solid. Like, I can't believe I actually had, like, fun playing with the Smart Brick. Like, the training feature is maybe the most interesting part. Like, making him level up is really cool. Like, this is so satisfying. I could do this all day to make Pikachu level up while beating this like wooden, this like piece of wood here you can make Pikachu beat up his wood, and he just levels up, and he gets more powerful as he does it. And I think that's very satisfying. That's really cool. And you can hear exactly how much you've leveled him up when you move him away from it. So let's hear that right now, right? You can hear the music. We'll put him down. You can hear all the levels go up, so that's really cool. And then, of course, you have the sandwich, which actually allows him to heal. So if you're mid-combat and you need to gain some health points back, you can put the sandwich by him. He says thank you, and he heals. But I feel like this can only be fully demonstrated with an actual Pokemon for him to fight. So we are going to take, let's take someone like really powerful. We're going to recreate the Detective Pikachu movie, and we're going to flash forward. We haven't looked at Charizard yet, so this is a bit of a sneak peek into what's to come. But I'm going to wake up Charizard, and we're going to have a fight. So normally, this would be a pretty even match, you know, Pikachu versus Charizard. Actually, Charizard's probably even more powerful. But now, my Pikachu's been leveled up. So how many hits will it take to completely wreck Charizard? Okay, this is leveled up Pikachu. Charizard died. That was like 4 hits. That was 3 or 4 hits. That's crazy. I wonder if we can get him with like a single charged attack. So I'm gonna do a charge attack now. I didn't even get to do the charge attack. He already killed him. That's crazy. But now, let's see what happens if Pikachu's beating up Charizard, but he manages to steal Pikachu's sandwich. So let's initiate a fight again. So Pikachu's gonna hit him a few times, but since Pikachu's been hitting the gym, Charizard is no match. Okay. Charizard's health is red, but let's take the sandwich. All of a sudden, his health is, I mean, it's still red, but it's a little less red. But Pikachu still wins this one because he's just super OP. Maybe we can get Charizard at least a couple hits in. See, lots and lots of hits. Pikachu, there, he did a charge attack. It barely did anything to Pikachu. Pikachu is now more powerful than God. Watch this. See, he won 2 hits. And that's awesome. Like, that is a permanent level up when you're actually in this play session. So any of your opponents are just cooked. Like, this is completely over now for good old Charizard here. So we are going to retire Charizard, and we will be able to take a look more about Charizard in a little bit, because there's actually a lot of fun that can be done with Charizard here. Pikachu says goodbye. But now, I think we've taken as much of a look as we can at what you can do with Smart Play integrated into this particular set. Again, while I feel like the $70 price is really, really high, this to me succeeds where almost every other Smart Brick Lego set failed that includes a Smart Brick. And the major point is that, for one, every single Smart Brick interaction here, I feel actually adds something to play. It's not like Lego Star Wars where you put the fuel container in, but it doesn't do anything, or you put the repair in, but it doesn't do anything, and combat is not affected by any of this. This is a set that allows you to change the way that you can do combat against each other and against your friends, which is really cool. Like, the training mechanism is so satisfying. This doesn't change combat, but allowing Pikachu to pop out and hear a different music play is really nice. You have his bed where he can sleep in, and I didn't hear the sleeping and snoring sound, but again, much like all the other Pokemon, he can snore. You have the sandwich, which I think it restores his health, although it didn't really do much for Charizard, so at this point, I'm not really sure. I know there's another thing that definitely does restore your health, so that certainly is the case. But again, there's 4 different things you can do to interact with the Smart Bricks here, and every single one of them I do feel like materially makes this a little bit more fun to play with the Smart Brick that's actually already included in the set. The set also does come with your Smart Brick charger and wire, and so you get 2 of these across the Pokemon sets and a couple more of them in the Star Wars sets, and altogether, for $70, while the price is high, I like this way, way, way better than the $70 Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, which had the exact same stuff in it, but was just a much worse toy, in my opinion. So with that, let's move on to the next set. Next up here at $80, we have set 72165 Umbreon vs Garchomp Championship Battle. It retails for $80, 80 euros, or 70 British pounds, and comes with 831 pieces, which is interesting because when I look at this, I don't really know if I see $80 worth of Lego, but by the piece count, it actually does make a lot of sense. But then you start to realize that there are a couple of items in this set that don't really make a lot of sense. First of all, there is a giant Pokeball, and while I think the build is cool, it's in scale with one of the polybag builds, I don't really know why this is in the set. Like, they should have just included one of the regular Pokeballs in it for the small scale. Having a gigantic Pokeball doesn't really add anything to the set until you realize that, oh, maybe they just had leftover budget and decided to throw one in. Same for the trophy here. I think this actually makes a little more sense, like being in the set. It is a championship battle, and I actually kind of like the build. Like, having the tassels dangle just directly down on the trophy is a really cool building technique we've never really seen LEGO integrate into an official set before. So it's actually pretty cool for what it is. But I totally would have been happy to knock $10 or even $15 off the price tag just to completely remove the trophy and the Pokeball and just focus on the Pokemon. I feel like nobody would have complained if they didn't have the trophy and didn't have the giant Pokeball out of scale with the rest of the characters and just had the two Pokemon. So with that, I'm going to set them aside because there's literally nothing you can do with them. They are just there for display, and focus in on the Pokemon themselves. Garchomp is definitely the one that I'm most excited for because this is a fully bespoke, unique build with some really clever and interesting building techniques. Like, for instance, you can have the wings and the claws flap up and down. You can also articulate the way that the wings work, so you can have it be bent and have it do an attack and move the arms forward, which is really cool. The legs are on ratchet joints in dark blue, which is quite nice, reminiscent of the recolors they would do for ratchet joints back in the day for Knight's Kingdom 2. You have your feet mounted on ball joints here, and that is quite nice as well, so you get a full range of posability. The back tail is also mounted on a mixel joint or mini ball joint. You have this very large back fin that you can basically use as a handle when you're swooshing them around. You can have the jaws open and close, and the only thing is that you can't move the head around, but that honestly makes sense. I feel like there wasn't really any way they could have integrated head articulation. Maybe they could have had it rotate. Like, I feel like there's a world in which it could have rotated, but the head is so heavy, they probably fixed it so it wouldn't just flop around during play. The other interesting thing that this set introduces that is also used in some of the other Pokemon sets are brand new additions to the LEGO Tooth, Claw, and Barb family, and these are these very small tooth elements. The set does come with a couple of spares, which is really nice, and all I could think of when putting these on are, wow, I cannot believe how useful these pieces are going to be for Bionicle mocks, which actually introduced for the very first time back in 2007, the Bionicle Baraki introduced the claw and barb elements, the kind of curved tooth pieces. And now these ones are fully straight. You can use them as teeth, you can use them as spikes. This is just going to be one of the most useful parts to come out of the Pokemon line, a theme that already features a lot of really useful parts. So altogether, very, very happy with that, and I think that this is definitely one of the more interesting Pokemon to look at. It feels very unique. You can have him be flying around with the wings there, and kind of have the legs be pulled back, and have him be soaring through the air like so, which I'm sure is going to be accentuated even more when you actually have the smart brick in there to make the sound. So altogether, this is actually pretty cool. I actually kind of like this a lot. So we're starting off pretty strong. Umbreon, on the other hand, to be honest, I am very, very mixed on. So this is almost an identical build, or at least identical in a lot of ways. Obviously, it uses much newer pieces, but very, very similar to the LEGO Elves builds of the past. And what those Elves sets did was that you had your legs, which could just move back and forth. You had these very tiny feet on them. You could not articulate the legs out, like you couldn't splay the legs out because they weren't on actual joints. They were just attached close to the body like so, and you couldn't really articulate it as you would want to do for a standard LEGO creature. It also feels really, really blocky, like the entire thing is just a tube, which I get is supposed to be the point of Smart Play Pokemon. This is the aesthetic style they're going for, but it really is just kind of a tube. It's not a very interesting looking build. The tail can move back and forth on a ball joint, but that doesn't really add that much, and then you can position the ears as well. Now, the biggest problem to me is that this flops and falls over really, really easily. Unless you're really careful when you pose it up, it's really easy to just place this down, especially as a kid, and have the legs just be splayed out a little too much, and then it will just automatically flop down, and that is a major downside to me. One of the ways that the LEGO Elves creatures, like almost 10 years ago, solved this in 2017 was having a very intricate studs in the side system that actually allowed you to have mixel joint attachments on there. They weren't mixel joints in the sense of being able to angle the limbs back and forth, but they provided a lot more friction than a standard Technic right pin. And I get while they couldn't do that for this set because of the Smart Brick integration on the front, they totally could have done it for the back legs, and I feel like that would have helped a lot in terms of being able to make this a lot more posable and keep its poses. Like, if you want to have it standing on 3 legs and have 1 foot outreached, which you could do with the elves creatures that looked the same, good luck. You cannot do that here because of the way the joints are just articulated such that it will just always topple over because there's not enough friction in the legs. It's nice to get the printing on the side of the legs, I think that's neat, but altogether this is probably one of the weakest Pokemon for me just because of the way it's so blocky, there's not enough friction in the legs, and it just isn't really that interesting. So while I do love Garchomp, I feel like Umbreon does leave a lot to be desired here. However, the entire point is that this is a championship battle, so let's go ahead and take a couple of these Smart Bricks here and see what we can do when we actually have them in the Pokemon. We're going to start off with the one that I'm more excited about, which is Garchomp over here. So the way it works is you remove part of his chest there, you take the tile off, and then you can place this on the inside, and let's hear how that sounds. So first of all, you'll notice that he makes, honestly, kind of an annoying sound, and that is because he is always in flight. So he kind of makes a wing and air swooshing sound. I definitely liked the other sounds that some of the other creatures made when they were moving around, like Mew made when he was floating. That was a really cool sound. Like Lapras made with the bubbles. I think that was really cool. This one's, you know, it's not the greatest, I feel. Like, it's kind of annoying, actually, after a while. If you're just holding him, it kind of just sounds like static. And yeah, that's not my microphone. That's the Smart Brick there. So I'm going to put him down for now, but now let's hear what it sounds like when you actually put one in Umbreon as well. So I'm going to remove the front of Umbreon there, take the Smart Brick, and place it on the inside. Okay, a little more high-pitched, but definitely not as high-pitched as some of the other creatures. And then let's hear what it sounds like when they actually talk to each other. Come on, do something. Do they not? Are they not talking to each other? They not recognize? Maybe this is a battle. They don't want to talk to each other. They don't want to converse. Let me like put them really close. Yeah, no, these ones don't want to talk to each other. That's actually really funny. I don't really know why that's the case, actually. That's a little odd. I mean, is the battery? No, battery's okay on this. Wow, yeah, they do not want to talk. This is like, I mean, this is crazy. This is like pre-wrestling. They're staring each other down. They don't want to talk. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but I also don't understand why they're not talking. But let us hear what a battle sounds like so we can actually hear some of these attacks. Come on, battle time. Battle time. There we go. They're a little out of sync too, that's a little odd. But let's hear a charge attack for Umbreon. Come on, no, those are normal attacks. Again, it's very annoying to do a charge attack in battle. Oh, well, Umbreon just won because I was trying to make him do a charge attack and not fighting back. We're gonna try that one more time. Man, this is very annoying. I'm trying to do a charge attack, but it's not really doing it in battle. I don't know what I need to do to trigger it. Like, I feel like I'm doing the same shaking motion. Like, there we go. There we go. That was actually pretty cool. It sounded like a whoosh, but now let's go ahead and hear what a charge attack sounds like for Garchomp here. There we go. It was kind of more of a blast, so that was a nice little sound effect there. But it looks like Umbreon's fallen asleep, and I do want to hear the snoring as well. That is actually pretty good. That honestly kind of sounds like a cat. I feel like that kind of worked. At least like I'm getting the more feline energy from that. However, it did just topple over. I didn't mean to put him to sleep. He just fell over because it is this model. But let's wake him up and just hear what a charge attack sounds like on its own. I do like the whoosh. Like, there was a nice, like, lower whoosh that I haven't heard from the Smart Brick yet. Again, that's a cool thing, because, like, with Star Wars, all the ships kind of sounded the same because they were all just different variations of spaceships. Here, all the Pokemon have relatively unique attacks. Like, I don't think any two Pokemon have the exact same sounding attack, or if so, there are little differences here and there for the Pokemon to make them just stand out a little more, and that's something I really do appreciate. So we're gonna put the Smart Bricks away. By itself, though, $80, again, does feel like quite a lot to pay for something like this, especially with a model like Umbreon that I'm really just not the biggest fan of. Aesthetically, I was actually really excited for Umbreon because I feel like it looks really cool with the black and the yellow, but in practice, it just doesn't work very well. Like, you placing it down, the legs automatically just started to splay out. Like, that cannot be good for the creature. So not the biggest fan of that. I definitely would be more excited if there was just a way for them to improve this building technique in the future, because this is not the only creature of its style that they're doing. I mean, obviously they want to seemingly do all the different Eevee evolutions, so I feel like at some point down the line, should Smart Play Pokemon be successful, I'd like to see an improvement on how they do these models to not make them so flimsy. But with that, let's now move on to the next set. Alright, we have made it to the penultimate retail set. This is 72166 Cubone and Gengar's Spooky Showdown. It retails for $90 US, 90 euros, 80 British pounds, and comes with 782 pieces, which again is a little rough, especially for a set like this. I think $80 would have been a lot more fair for a set of this size, but 90 does feel like we are pushing it a little bit. That being said, it does include two Pokemon, two of which are very iconic, and one of which is very, very sizable. I don't know why, but this is not the size I pictured Gengar to be in my head. I watched the Pokemon anime when I was really, really young, and I don't remember him being quite this big, but it honestly kind of works for what they're trying to do. I mean, this is something that really reminds you that these are pocket monsters. I mean, this is a disgusting creature right here. Now, Gengar has a really fun play feature when you separate him from his base here, which has a play feature we'll take a look at in a second, where you can have his freaky tongue swing back and forth. Like, that is really freaky right there. I mean, if I saw a creature coming at me wiggling his tongue like that, I mean, it would not be a spooky showdown. It would be me running away. But yeah, this is something. That's a real disgusting monster. That's a very, very crazy play feature there where you can just wiggle his tongue back and forth, but it is very nicely built. I actually feel like this is super solid. It kind of reminds me of like King Boo from the Lego Mario sets, but just better because he's rounded and bigger and feels more imposing. There's a really nice like ball joint piece on the back there that is utilizing the new lavender purple color they introduced earlier this year for the Bionicle Voodoo ball joint. That is not a recolor for the set. They actually did that in this color for the Lego Harry Potter Snape's Potion Cauldron, but it actually works quite well. It's just ever so slightly a different shade of purple, so it shows you that that is actually a play function, which is quite nice. Now, the rest of the build is very blocky and square. You can move the arms up and down and kind of just rotate them like so, just mounted on Technic pins, but it works for what it is. And if you're wondering where the Smart Brick goes, well, unfortunately, this is the only one of the Pokemon that I feel like really suffers from the Smart Brick placement. You see, this entire brick comes out, and unfortunately, that means that the inside of Gengar's mouth, basically where the tongue is protruding from, has a very awkward protrusion underneath the tongue. For two studs, there's like a tiled surface that just juts out because that is this dark red tile right here, and that just causes it to kind of break the continuity of the inside of the mouth. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I think from a distance you like kind of don't notice, but if you get really up close with Gengar there, it becomes very, very obvious that there is just this awkward block inside his mouth. However, though, let's just put in the Smart Brick and hear what he sounds like. I kind of want to hear what this disgusting creature sounds like. He kind of says boo. You know, I think that kind of works for what he is. There is now a very obvious Smart Brick inside of his mouth, but, you know, I think some of the integrations have been a little worse, but he also makes this kind of menacing hover sound, which is quite cool to hear. So let's hear what that sounds like now. I I think that's actually really cool. It is a very distinctly different hover sound compared to Mew or Mewtwo. It is a lot lower. It feels more like a spooky floating ghost. And I think it's really cool how he kind of has his ambient sound that he makes as he flies around here. Now let's hear what a charge attack sounds like, because apparently I can't figure out how to do charge attacks during a duel. Okay, that is actually a really funny sound. I feel like that is, again, a very unique sound that you can only really hear with this particular Pokemon, this kind of ghost type and the spooky type right here. I mean, let's hear it one more time. It kind of almost feels like he's like sticking his tongue out at you at the end of that. Like when you launch it, it kind of goes like, brrr. Let's hear that one more time. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I feel like that's a really cool sound effect for him to make. So altogether, honestly, kind of a fan of how they integrated this. Before we take a look at Cubone, though, I do actually want to showcase the play feature, because this actually has a direct integration with a smart tag here that allows Gengar to fall over. So basically, there's a smart tag on the base of this platform. It's honestly not the most exciting build in the world, but it does have a very important play feature where you can place Gengar on the platform. There is a smart tag there, and the goal is to basically knock over both targets with Cubone to allow him to topple over backwards and allow you to claim the treasure, and all that happens at once. So I'm going to go ahead and place him on the platform so we can hear what that sounds like. Starts playing spooky music. It's kind of a banger, actually. This is like the best Smart Play music so far. I really like this. This is actually really good. So again, the way it works is that you can knock over one target, boom, but wait, he hasn't toppled over yet. You have to knock over the other target as well. And then Gengar says something along the lines of uh-oh and falls over, and that's the end of it. And you'll notice that the process of doing that also launched the treasure chest out, which is filled with a purple crystal. Very appropriately so, the same color they use the opalescent satin transparent purple for LEGO City Space, which is quite nice to see. So it's a very simple play feature. There's a little lever underneath the platform that allows it to push the chest up, but I think this actually works quite well. Is Gengar snoring though? I do want to hear that. Oh, wow. Listen to that. That's a very funny sound. Again, even the snoring is like distinctly different for all the Pokemon, which is really cool. Let's wake him up. He says, wah. And that's the most smart bricky noise he's made so far. I was actually liking a lot of the other noises, but again, this one actually does have a really cool soundtrack that you can play as well when he's on there. And there is one other smart integration here, and that is a training target. So once again, we have another training station the same way that we have at the Pikachu house, and we can separate that out here. And the way it works is that you can scan the training tag, and you can level up your Gengar. But the music is a little different because this is spooky training now, you know? Instead of attacking and beating up the wood from Pikachu's house, you're now beating the spooky wood, which is a different soundtrack, which is really cool. So let's listen to that right now. So very cool. You have a spooky soundtrack there. You can level up your Gengar like so, and then you can cause him to gain a lot more power in his attacks. Not that he was imposing enough already, but that's the way this works. It's super simple. It's very satisfying to hit this thing and have it keep bouncing back. It's so simply built. But I actually really like the integration here. I feel like this is a really cool way to train up your Pokemon, and as you continue training, the music pace picks up a little bit. So as you shake them around even more, you'll notice the music playing a little bit faster. So I'm going to place that down. And now you can hear all the different levels he has gained. But now let's set Gengar aside and take a look at Cubone. Now Cubone is another kind of like spooky oriented one, which he does have the skull over his head, which is really nicely done. And that's what sets him apart from all of the other Pokemon of the scale. He is once again one of those smaller Pokemon, which is similar in scale to the other ones or similar in size, but The bone head is really good. I think that this actually might be one of my favorite details on almost any of the Pokemon. I think it's sculpted very, very nicely. It just comes together really well, and I feel like they did a really good job to depict the skull over his head here. But now, let's go ahead and place the smart brick inside and hear what he sounds like with the brick inside of him. So it's a little higher pitched here, and we can hear what a charge attack sounds like as well. There you go, you know, a little bit of a different charge attack, but now I think Cubone deserves to do a little bit of training before his battle. So we can scan the training. Again, you're playing the spooky training music because now this is the spooky item right here, and you just keep hitting it over and over again, and basically you're going to be able to gain more levels. Now, the only downside here that I think is a little odd is that unlike the Lapras set, which had the treasure chest, this also has the treasure chest, but no smart tag on the treasure chest. They could have literally included the same one to gain treasure, but unfortunately that's just not really something that's present here, which I feel like is a little disappointing compared to what I was personally hoping for at least some continuity in all the different play features. But now that he's gained a lot of levels, let's hear how much he's leveled up. All right, I think it's time to initiate a battle. I think Cubone got trained up a little more than Gengar here. But first, they can talk to each other. So let's hear what it sounds like when they talk to each other. Come on, talk to each other. Wow, that tongue is all over Cubone. That's crazy. They're not even... Dude, talk to him first at least. Jeez, I mean, what's going on here? He's not even bothering to talk. His tongue's already in there. So, I mean, I hate it when that happens. But okay, well, if they're not going to talk, at least we can get some action going on between them and have a fight happen. So let's shake them to start a fight. All right. We started with some tongue action, and now it's time for some physical hands-on action. So first, we are going to start with a charge attack, if I can get it to happen. Charge attack, launch! Look at that, charge attack 1. There you go. So again, you can have your battles here. It's pretty simple, nothing crazy yet. We're not getting to healing yet, which we're saving for the largest set, but there is some good interactability here, and while I'm honest, this is honestly one of those smart play sets that I feel like only really works very well when you actually have the smart bricks integrated in. I'm sorry to say that. I definitely think it's a lot better than some of the other ones, but when you look at this as a holistic set on its own, I think the two things that are really exciting if you look at them by themselves are Gengar and Cubone, and this is maybe one of the least interesting platforms you can get. I think the training is actually fun. I mean, you can play with the training tree no matter what. Like, you don't need the smart brick to play with it, but like, this is, I don't know what this is supposed to be. It's like maybe a grave or a tomb or something, and you knock over the targets and it launches the treasure chest, but it is, at the end of the day, just a big, flat, black platform, and it's not the most exciting build, and especially for $90. I mean, I'm just not really seeing the value here. I think this might actually be one of the most overpriced sets in the entire wave, which honestly is kind of saying a lot because I feel like this wave has been relatively decently priced compared to the others, but this just feels really expensive for what it is. I think that by itself, I mean, $40 for Gengar, let's say 40, and let's say 15. Like, that is a lot of money already, but $55 for these two Pokemon. Am I really actually seeing $35 worth of additional value from this build? No, I think this build is maybe a $20 build, $25, not $35 for sure. So I think this should have been really $10 cheaper. As I said at the beginning, $80 would have made a lot more sense to me, but it is just kind of a slightly overpriced standout in a wave that is actually filled with relatively fair pricing. So I can't complain too much. And now let's take a look at the final retail set. Alright, we have made it to the largest set of the wave. This is 72167 Charizard versus Jolteon Ultimate Battle. It retails for 120 US dollars, 120 euros, 110 British pounds, and comes with 751 pieces, which is a lot of money for not a lot of pieces, but it also comes with the Smart Brick Charger and 2 Smart Bricks. Out of all the Pokemon sets, this is one of only 2 that actually feature Smart Bricks, and the only one that actually features Smart Bricks that you can have a battle happen inside the set, which is actually a good thing in my opinion, because these Smart Bricks had so much cost to a set that I would have been so much happier, and I am so much happier, that so many of the Pokemon sets can stand on their own merits without needing Smart Bricks to be integrated in and just have the cost to be super high arbitrarily. So altogether, I'm actually pretty happy with the Smart Brick integration here. Now, setting aside the Smart Bricks though, let's take a look at what you actually get in the set. If you were not to include the Smart Bricks, that would probably remove like $60 from the price. So this is more like a $60 set, and I feel like I'm getting more than $60 worth of value in the builds here, so it all kind of evens out. Let me take a look at Charizard here first. I think he's going to be the most exciting one. You have the tail mounted on the ratchet joint, which can be angled up and down and backwards and forwards. That also has a ball joint right here for the end of the tail, and a mini ball joint or a mixel joint on the flame tip, which looks really good. I actually think this looks really solid. You do have the option to move the legs back and forth, also mounted on the click joints there, and the feet themselves are mounted on the mini ball joints. The hands are honestly the most awkward to me. They are very, very spindly, and you cannot pose them whatsoever. You can only raise them up and down. You can rotate the hands, but the arms themselves just feel so spindly for Charizard, and I understand that those are kind of what his arms are supposed to look like. They're supposed to be smaller than the rest, but they just feel so small compared to the rest of the body that it feels a little bit awkward. Now, one thing you'll notice on the feet and on the hands are the integration of those new claw pieces. I talked about these when we took a look at some of the other sets, like the Umbreon set, but this one actually is really good because it uses them as claws instead of just spikes on the body. So the bottom feet have these spiky claws which work really nicely. You have the hands that also have the little spiked claws, and they could have just used the standard claw element, but they went for this more kind of flat, geometric, and conical shape here, which is really interesting, and I'm so glad the set includes so many of them. They even use them for the teeth up there, which was a really smart choice. Now, speaking of the head, you can open and close the jaw back and forth. You do have the integration of these newer elements introduced for LEGO Pokemon in the curvature there to allow the eyes to be printed on the side, and you can kind of move the ears back and forth a little bit and have the head look back and forth and up and down on a ball joint. So much articulation there goes into the head. And then of course for the wings, you have these kind of fabric components. They feel very high quality. They're not your standard kind of cheaper style of sail element. These actually feel very weighty, which is really nice, and they can flap back and forth. I almost kind of wish the wings were mounted on ball joints. I feel like mounting them on mixel joints would have been a lot more fun to pose around, but I also think that in battle, when you're like flapping this around, those would just go all over the place, so it makes sense that for smart play, they decided to just mount the wings on the friction Technic pins. Now, we're going to start off by setting the side build aside and just taking a look at what you can do with the set by itself first. So the next creature that we have here is Jolteon. Jolteon here is a very similar build to Umbreon, and I complained a lot about Umbreon when we saw it in the review for that other set. I felt like it was just way too flimsy with the legs, and to kind of echo some of my complaints, this is built very similarly to the LEGO Elves creatures that they did back in 2017, but instead of mounting the legs on mixel joints for more friction, they've actually mounted them just on Technic pins, so it is relatively easy for it to just flop over, but thankfully it is a little more stable than its counterpart thanks to just slightly different building techniques being used, like the tail isn't as heavy, and there just feels like there's a little more friction there to hold up the weight of the body, so it's not as bad as Umbreon, but I would love to see even more friction in the legs here rather than just your standard Technic pin. One downside that I feel like is a very odd choice here is that to attach the legs, they actually chose to utilize the light bluish gray pieces of Technic on the side here, and they literally include yellow ones in the set, so I don't really understand why they did that. I guess they wanted to make it a little easier for kids to build and understand, and when you're building the body part, you do have like standard 2x1 pieces without the Technic hole, but I feel like that just takes away a lot from the body when you can see just a little bit of gray on the side of the legs. Altogether though, I do like the aesthetics of the build. Other than that, you do have some nice fur going along the side, this very spiky electrified back tail, which you can actually angle back and forth, which I think is really nice. The white fur also can be angled and adds a lot of nice design depth to the build. And then of course the ears, which you can pose up and down and back and forth, so you can kind of have one ear tweaked there, which I think is quite nice. But now let's actually go ahead and integrate these smart bricks and see how these sound and interact with each other before we move on to the main actual part of the build here, which is really just meant to be a training course. And if you saw the other parts of this review, you're going to know that the training courses are actually quite a lot of fun. So first, we are going to take Charizard and rip out his crotch area here, as one does, and take a Smart Brick and place it inside of him. So I'm going to take the Smart Brick here, wake up, and then let's place it inside Charizard and hear what noise he makes. Okay, that makes sense, kind of a roar. And now, the cool thing is, as you fly him around, it sounds like wings are flapping. So I'm gonna stop talking here so you can hear what that sounds like. So again, it really feels like those wings are flapping. Now let's hear what a charge attack sounds like. So it has this very fiery sound to it, which I think is really cool. And altogether, it's really menacing to be like, as a kid, having the wings be flapping, literally hearing the flapping sound as you're flapping the wings, as you're letting him fly over the air. I think that is just such a cool touch. And one of my favorite things about the noises that these Smart Bricks make for the Pokemon, unlike LEGO Star Wars, it really feels that every Pokemon has their own very distinct sound based on the type of Pokemon that they are. Like the wings flapping here just works so well. But now, let's go ahead and hear what Jolteon sounds like, and we're gonna rip out the stomach of Jolteon here and see what it sounds like with the Smart Brick placed on the top there. So we're gonna place it in. Very high-pitched in comparison. No wing flapping sound on this one. And now, let's go ahead and hear what they sound like talking to each other. Converse. Please converse. They're talking a little bit. You know, they're a little less friendly than some of the other Pokemon were, because I guess these ones are ready to fight. But you're hearing some noises come from them. But now I want to set Jolteon aside and hear what a charge attack sounds like. Okay, that is admittedly a pretty cool sound. I think that's a very cool sound. It sounds like electricity. It sounds like a lightning attack. I think that's really, really interesting. So I do really like the sound here. But of course, we have to hear what a battle sounds like. So let's shake them to activate the battle. Come on. There we go. Ooh. Okay, the music is not synced up here. That's interesting. A lot of times it did sync up the music well, but this time it's not, so we can land a few hits. But this set actually has something pretty interesting. So now you'll notice that Charizard's health is very low. The health bar there is in the yellow to red. He's not looking too good, but this set has a healing potion. So you can take a healing potion, press it to Charizard. You have to press and hold it, but there you can see the health is restored. So now he's ready to fight. Let's do a charge attack on Jolteon. Now Jolteon is pretty beat up, so now let's take the healing potion, heal him up. And there you go, now Jolteon's healed up and ready for battle, and they're ready to keep fighting. Who's gonna win? So Jolteon won, but now let's change the way things work, and that is where the side build comes in. I will say, this is one of the weaker side builds. I think that this is really lame looking. Like, this does not look exciting. It doesn't even look fun like some of the other training courses, but this does have a pretty interesting play feature in that, much like the Pikachu house and the Gengar set, you can actually train with these. You can literally train your motions. So now let's power up Charizard. He lost the fight. He's going to hit the gym. He's rethinking his life choices, losing to a cat. And let's scan the training piece here. So we've customized music for this training arena, and the way it works is you hit this lava piece over and over again to allow him to train up. So every time you hear a little bit of an electronic sound, he's leveling up a little bit. And you can also do it as he's hitting the other targets on the side here, hitting the targets on the side here, and that's really cool. Now you can also have them train at the same time. So Jolteon here as well can also be training. So this is now a train session. They are not fighting each other. They're both at the gym. They're both trying to train themselves up. And as you train during your one play session, you actually have the ability to level up your attacks, to make your attacks more powerful. So now let's set them aside. So now they're pretty trained up. So if we shake to start another duel now, let's do that one more time. Now it will be a lot easier to deduct health. So I'm going to do just a single attack. Boom. Boom. Jolteon already lost with just a few attacks because we trained Charizard up. I think that is such a cool feature. It's something that we did not see for any of these Star Wars sets. So that is absolutely something that I feel like improves the gameplay of Smart Play with Pokemon duels so much more when it comes to the LEGO versions, because you actually have mechanics in the set for healing and training. So you can make your attacks more powerful, and you can also heal them up mid-battle. And I can imagine, like, if I were playing with a friend, if I was a kid, we'd be fighting over the heal, we'd maybe put it in the center, we'd do our battle, we'd be grabbing the heal, trying to add it on to our characters here and there. And I think that is a really, really nice idea to be able to actually heal the health of all your characters there. So it's a really cool idea. I think that it works very well, and while I will say that the side builds of the set really only work for Smart Play, like, I don't think this is that fun by itself. This just doesn't even look that good by itself. The main focus of the build is on the Pokemon. The good thing is that the Pokemon actually look pretty good on their own, and when you do not have the Pokemon on their own and you have the Smart Bricks integrated, every single piece in the set does not feel wasted. Unlike the LEGO Star Wars sets, where I felt like so many parts of the build just did not make any sense with the Smart Brick even. They had so many things to fuel them up or to do repairs, but it didn't actually do repairs. It just made a hammer banging noise, and it didn't actually fuel them up. It just made a water gurgling noise. Here, you are actually affecting combat and gameplay outcome by having different items in the set do different things, which is really solid. So for $120, I will say this is a lot more fun than the Star Wars $60 set for the throne room. I think this is a lot more fun than that. This actually allows you to play with the Smart Bricks in interesting ways. It feels like there's more of a game here. Like, it's a lot more of a challenge to win fights because you have heals now and you have training areas. And the builds actually look pretty good on their own as well. Not the biggest fan of Jolteon. I think it does look better than Umbreon, but it's still on the weaker end of the Pokemon. But Charizard here is almost everything I would have asked for when it comes to a play scale Charizard. And if you want a super detailed one, they did release the giant set as well. So honestly, even for the price, I actually am pretty happy with this set. But there is one more Pokemon set left to go, and that one is not part of the standard retail line. You cannot just walk into a store and buy it. You had to buy it with a certain amount of threshold purchases, so we'll take a look at that one right now. Our final set to look at is a small one. 40887 is Ditto as Squirtle Movie Night. This was a gift with purchase. If you spent a certain amount of money on Smart Play, you'd be able to get this for free. Now, the pretty sinister part of this is that LEGO was very calculated in the threshold you had to purchase, where you, at a minimum, had to purchase at least 2 Smart Play sets in order to get this, because it was just barely above $120. So even if you bought the biggest Smart Play set, you had to buy at least one more in order to get this as a free gift. So it is what it is. I feel like LEGO has been doing so many different GWPs recently, and I honestly want to do a whole different video on like GWPs and the LEGO culture around GWPs changing and how many there are in a year now. But that's not really the purpose of a video like this. For this video, I just want to talk about the set as a whole. So the premise is that Ditto has been watching TV. He sees Squirtle. I guess he's a big fan of Squirtle. There's like a magazine with a sticker on it that has Squirtle on the front. There is Squirtle on the TV screen, and when you open up the drawers here, there is another TV screen you can pull out showcasing Squirtle on a Pokemon arena field getting ready for battle versus in the water that you can use to replace the screen of the Pokeball themed TV. And there's even a custom sticker for the remote control. So it's movie night. Ditto's got his popcorn and he says, you know what? I have body dysmorphism, I want to become Squirtle now, and he becomes Squirtle. And this is, for all intents and purposes, the identical build as the Squirtle that comes in the $50 Squirtle car, except it has a Ditto face. And honestly, I kind of like that. I appreciate that the GWP isn't some Pokemon that somebody would want to track down years later. It's Ditto transforming into another Pokemon, and given how rabid Pokemon fans can get and LEGO fans can get, I actually think it was kind of nice of LEGO to make the gift with purchase a Pokemon that can transform into another one, so it doesn't really matter that you don't have this for your collection, because at the very least, maybe at some point in the future, they're going to do a regular Ditto, like the pink blob Ditto, and that way you can actually have your normal Ditto and not have it as Squirtle here. So I think that's quite nice. Build aside though, this is actually a really solid build because I actually really liked the Squirtle build that we got for the car. The tail is nice, you have printed pieces for the side of the tail to allow it to swing back and forth. It's mounted on a mixel joint. The shell is really nice as well. They're using some great studs in the side techniques for the shell and some new curve pieces introduced for that. The head is so funny. I love the way the head looks. I think that might be one of my favorite new LEGO pieces, just like the Ditto head. It's just like 2 dots and a smiley face. That's so funny. And of course, it's just very charming in the way it all comes together. Now, I do want to take the opportunity to open it up, and let's go ahead and take a look at the smart tag inside and see what this sounds like with a smart brick on the inside. So we're gonna wake up the smart brick here and place it inside Ditto. It's, I believe, a very similar sound to Squirtle, but I don't think it's the exact same. For reference, I am actually going to grab Squirtle and see if they make the exact same noises, or if there's any difference when you actually have these smart bricks. So here's the Squirtle from the main sets, and let's go ahead and place the smart brick on the inside. It sounds very similar, so what if they're talking to each other now? Come on, talk to each other. Come on, say something. Yeah, so they do sound identical, but honestly, that's like kind of funny. I feel like that adds a little bit to the fun of playing with this, where they literally sound identical and exactly the same, because that's what Ditto does. Ditto turns into the creature it's trying to mimic. Now I feel like we got to do a battle between Ditto as Squirtle and regular Squirtle. So let's start a battle. Let's see who wins. All right, hit, charge attack. Launch, charge attack. Boom. They both launch attack each other. Oh, looks like regular Squirtle is down a little bit lower than Ditto here. And Ditto won. So there you go. I guess if you mimic Squirtle, you can be more powerful than even Squirtle himself. So altogether, it's a fun little toy, and as a GWP, I feel like I definitely don't mind it as a set. I think that it was the perfect thing to do as a GWP because, again, it's not like you're really missing out on getting an exclusive Pokemon or something like that. While there aren't any regular Dittos in the mainline sets, it's not like getting a Pokemon all to itself in the gift with purchase, and the build is identical to one of the other Pokemon builds. So I think that for a gift with purchase, this makes the most sense to me. I like it, it's cute, it's very funny. I don't really have that much else to say other than, yeah, this is a cute little thing, and I do actually like the Pokeball themed TV screen as well. I think that's actually quite a nice touch there. But now, let's take a step back and talk about Smart Play Pokemon as a whole. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at Smart Play Pokemon. Again, cannot believe I'm saying this, but I actually really like these things, and I feel like I said pretty much everything that I had to say about them in the intro, but once we've looked at all the sets here, I just want to reiterate my points. Like, I feel like these are pretty decently priced. I feel like the Smart Brick is not needed to actually enjoy most of these sets, especially the small sets, which I love. It would suck to buy a $20 set and then go, oh wait, I can't enjoy this without buying at a minimum another $70 set. You know, that feels awful. But that's not the case. Like, you can have fun with the $20 sets, with the larger sets, without the Smart Brick. You can buy the Charizard set and just play with Charizard. You don't need the Smart Brick to enjoy it. So I honestly feel like somehow the Smart Brick kind of cooked on this wave. Now again, I will also reiterate that Pokemon is probably the only theme that I think the Smart Brick could actually succeed at. maybe Transformers. If they made like play scale Transformers and they put the smart bricks in them, I think that could maybe work. Because then you could have the characters fight each other, and then you could have transforming noises, and they sound like robots. Lego, write that down. Lego, please, I'm begging you, write that down. Please, Lego, I don't just want 18 plus slot for Transformers. Please give us actual Transformers we can play with, and my life is yours. Okay, that is a side tangent. But other than those two IPs, I don't think there's any other Lego theme out there right now that the Smart Play makes sense to play with. Like, maybe Lego City, that was when they did the Smart Play pilot last year in the UK. It started off with city sets, and those were like fine, but not the most exciting. I'm very worried about Smart Play Ninjago next year. I do not think it has a place in Ninjago. I don't think it makes any sense for it to be there. I'm quite concerned. So I am worried about that. But when it comes to Pokemon, they actually are kind of cooking here. So let me know if you disagree or agree with my opinion. And I would encourage you, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I was very biased against the Smart Brick, especially when I played with these Star Wars sets and said, you know what? I don't think these are cool, but I'm going to give them a shot. And I gave them a shot and I was like, wow, these are awful. I do not like these. And then I got the Pokemon sets and I went into these fully prepared to hate them. Like, I literally bought these with the intent of saying like, oh, I'm not going to like these. I hated Star Wars Smart Play. I'm very skeptical. And then I built one, and I built another, and I built all of them, and then I played the game, and it was actually a lot of fun, and I completely changed my mind. Like, Smart Brick, perhaps I was too harsh on you, my boy. Like, I think that these are actually pretty good, and I'm having a lot of fun with Smart Play Pokemon, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. So I actually would encourage you, like, if you're interested in Pokemon and you want to give these a shot, like, you don't need the Smart Brick to enjoy this. I actually would not recommend buying any of the ones with the Smart Brick in them because they're overpriced. Like, buy a $20 set, and if you like the build, then go from there and see what it's like, because I was definitely biased against these because Smart Brick is plastered all over the packaging, and I honestly feel like these are good enough sets that they deserve a second chance, and I really want this line to continue. I actually do not want this line to fail. I genuinely want there to be more of these. I want to collect them all, I gotta catch them all, so I hope we're getting more. I'm sure we're getting more next year. After that, we're going to have to wait and see like what the Smart Brick is doing like in 2 years from now, if they're going to still be pushing it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I like these. So I hope these do well. And this is just my opinion after all. So do let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. And that about sums up our look at every single Smart Play Pokemon set. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. And bye for now.